Chapter 924. Seeing Xiao Wanru's indifferent expression, old madam hated her in her heart, but she didn't show any dissatisfaction on her face. She still looked affectionate and pushed a plate of snacks in front of Xiao Wanru. "Ru, try this snack. It was made by the new cook in the mansion. If you think it's good, you can take this cook back later. This cook is also from Jiangzhou and is good at making snacks in Changjiangzhou." There were not many snacks on the plate, only about 10 pieces. They were indeed the characteristics of snacks in Jiangzhou. Xiao Wanru grew up in Jiangzhou. Even though she had moved to the capital city now, she would occasionally think of the food in Jiangzhou because of her eating habits. However, she couldn't find anyone in the capital city who was good at the food in Changjiangzhou, so she gradually gave up this idea. Now when she saw it again, she couldn't help but move her index finger slightly. Yujie took a piece of it with a handkerchief for her. Xiao Wanru took it and took a bite. She nodded with a smile and said, "It tastes very pure." "Since it's pure, take the cook over later," old madam said with a smile. "Thank you, grandma." The smile on Xiao Wanru's snow-white face became gentler. She put down the handkerchief in her hand, stood up, and bowed deeply to old madam. "Don't be so polite. I'm your grandma, so I naturally hope that you can eat well. You have been in Jiangzhou for so many years, so I'm afraid that the food in the capital city is a little different. It happens that such a cook comes over, so I thought that you could take her away if you think it's good." Old madam took Xiao Wanru's hand and pulled her to sit down lovingly. "Grandma, fifth sister must know your feelings for her. Fifth sister has been very filial to you in the past," Zhao Shiran said with a smile. While flattering old madam, he also flattered Xiao Wanru. She was indeed a smooth and slick person, and even her heart was crystal clear. She seemed to be very close to everyone in Marquis Xing's mansion, as if what happened on the wedding day had nothing to do with her. Xiao Wanru smiled calmly and turned to look at Chu Qing with her watery eyes deepened. Seeing that she noticed Chu Qing, old madam winked at Zhao Shiran. Zhao Shiran said with a smile, pointed at Chu Qing, and said, "Fifth sister, I happen to have something to ask you." "You're welcome, first sister-in-law. As a married woman with an elder, how can I make any decision?" Xiao Wanru smiled silently. Although fifth younger sister is married, she is still the daughter of the Xiao enterprise. This matter was originally decided by grandmother, but it is related to the future of the two younger sisters. Grandmother wanted more people to help make decisions, so she invited fifth younger sister here. Zhao Shiran said. Xiao Wanru said softly, "Eldest sister-in-law, please go ahead." Of course, she knew that since she came here today, old madam would definitely say it. She just slightly refused to let old madam understand that she could not interfere in this matter now. This matter is really related to second younger sister and fifth younger sister. Zhao Shiran said. She looked up at Xiao Kaling and sighed. Originally, this matter was only related to second younger sister, but second younger sister said that this marriage should be given to third younger sister. Give the marriage to Xiao Zaihuan? From Zhao Shiran's words, of course, Xiao Jie did this for Xiao Zaihuan. Xiao Zaihuan's appearance had been damaged recently, and she didn't know how she was doing recently. But in any case, she should be fine now. Giving the marriage to Xiao Jie was also for Xiao Zaihuan's good. How could Xiao Jie be such a person? Xiao Wanru's eyes were full of sadness. How could she not know Xiao Jie's character? "What do you think, grandmother?" Xiao Wanru asked. "I didn't want to do this at first, but after thinking about it, it is good for everyone. No matter how bad third young lady is, she is the daughter of lineal descent, while second young lady is just a daughter of a concubine. It is also a good thing for Commandery Prince Qing to marry as a daughter of lineal descent." Old madam sighed. Her words made Chu Qing's heart skip a beat. Just now, old madam did say that their mansion wanted to marry Xiao Zaihuan into his mansion. While they were talking, Xiao Wanru came. If it was really like this, it was not bad. A daughter of lineal descent was naturally better than a daughter of a concubine. But there are many people in the Imperial Palace who know about the marriage between second sister and Commandery Prince Qing. Xiao Wanru raised her watery eyes unhurriedly and reminded them. This is good for both Marquis Xing's mansion and Commandery Prince Qing's mansion. The only bad thing is here, so I have to trouble you to explain it to the Empress Dowager. It's not that our mansion is reluctant to let second sister go, but third sister is more suitable for this matter than second sister. Zhao Xiran frowned, looked around Xiao Wanru's face, and said in distress. What happened to Xiao Jie and Xiao Huan happened in the Imperial Palace. Speaking of the situation at that time, both Xiao Jie and Xiao Zaihuan seemed to be victims, and they were both innocent. Since both of them were innocent and they were willing to exchange, it was a good thing for the two mansions. If the Empress Dowager and the Empress in the Imperial Palace knew about it, they would sympathize and agree with them. Grandma, I'm just a married girl, and I'm a little younger than second sister and third sister. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for me to tell them about this matter. Xiao Wanru shook her head, smiled, and refused bluntly. Old Madam's face darkened and her face darkened. Fifth sister, in fact, you don't have to say anything. As long as you tell them about what happened between our mansion and Commandery Prince Qing, the Empress Dowager will definitely make a decision for us. Zhao Xiran explained. I don't dare. Xiao Wanru said with an imperceptible sneer across the corners of her mouth. She was going to push the blame to her. Exchanging Xiao Jie for Xiao Tahuan was originally for something else, and it was closely related to her cheap second uncle. No matter what he was up to, it would not do her any good. If it was exposed in the future, it would fall on Prince Chen's mansion. In contrast, Marquis Xing's mansion was innocent. At that time, they could completely say that they took advantage of their identity as Princess Chen to enforce the law in Marquis Xing's mansion. Because they didn't get along well with Xiao Jie, they forced Xiao Jie's marriage to Xiao Zaihuan. Old Madam's words were enough to turn right and wrong upside down. As for Zhao Xiran, he was completely able to say what people said and what people said. Fifth girl, you are unwilling. You are the dignified Princess Chen. You just need to say this kind of thing. Why don't you dare to do it? Old Madam said with a cold face. Grandma, I really don't dare. It's not that I don't dare to say such a thing to the Empress Dowager. I'm afraid that Prince Chen will be angry. His Highness doesn't want me to meddle in other people's business. When I married into Prince Chen's mansion, His Highness told me that from now on, Princess Chen should be indifferent and natural. Don't extend your hand too far and make the Empress Dowager and His Majesty angry. Prince Chen's mansion has never intervened in the family affairs of the ministers in the court. Xiao Wanru said unhurriedly. What she meant was that Prince Chen's mansion would not form cliques, let alone get involved with the ministers because of interests. When she married into Prince Chen's mansion, Prince Chen had already warned her. Fifth girl. Old Madam was so angry that she wanted to hit the table. Seeing that the situation was not good, Zhao Xiran hurriedly pulled Old Madam's sleeve and said with a sweet smile, Fifth sister is right. Prince Chen is originally a quiet person and is not willing to meddle in the family affairs of the ministers. But Marquis Xing's mansion is different. After all, Marquis Xing's mansion is fifth sister's family. Even if fifth sister married into Prince Chen's mansion, Marquis Xing's mansion is still behind her. Her words very neatly explained the reason for Old Madam's anger, which could be regarded as fighting for a little time for Old Madam to think. With such a little time to think, Old Madam could not immediately fly into a rage and really scold Xiao Wanru. Their identities were different, and Xiao Wanru was now backed by Prince Chen's mansion. If Xiao Wanru angered Prince Chen, he would not be easy to deal with. Zhao Xiran had heard from her father repeatedly that Prince Chen was not as gentle and leisurely as he seemed to be. She could offend anyone but Prince Chen. Otherwise, she would definitely be in trouble. Since her father had said so, Zhao Xiran certainly could not do anything to Xiao Wanru, who was pretending to be a tiger. Not only could she not do anything to Xiao Wanru, but she also could not make Old Madam angry, lest things get out of hand in the end. No matter how different Marquis Xing's mansion is, it is still the mansion of the ministers. Although Prince Chen's mansion has fallen, it is still the mansion of the princes. I heard that Duke Yong's mansion got into trouble because it made friends with the princes, Xiao Wanru said with a smile. Her words not only made Old Madam's face change, but also Chu Qing's face change. Although the matter of Duke Yong's mansion was not clear, it was basically related to the two princes. They didn't know what Duke Yong had done to make the emperor so disgusted. The relationship between Prince Yu and Prince Zhou is also related to Duke Yong's mansion. If the relationship between Commandery Prince Qing and Marquis Xing's mansion is also related to Prince Qin, I don't know what the emperor will think. Seeing that the faces of several people in the room changed at the same time, Xiao Wanru continued. Old Madam gasped and felt a little flustered. Prince Chen and Commandery Prince Qing were not only the two princes, but also the two princes left by the late emperor. If both of them were related to Marquis Xing's mansion, would the emperor think that Marquis Xing's mansion had ulterior motives? Even if they did not have ulterior motives and it happened by accident, the emperor might still be suspicious of Marquis Xing's mansion. If it were in the past, Old Madam would not be afraid of the emperor's unreasonable suspicion. But now Marquis Xing's mansion could not withstand any storm. At this time, they should be more cautious. Any action that stood out could bring disaster to Marquis Xing's mansion. Commandery Prince Qing, this matter has something to do with you. What do you think? Do you want to change it or not? If you want to change it, you have your reasons. If you don't want to change it, you have your rules. You are a prince in the imperial court. At this time, it is not good for you to allow other mansions' ideas without saying anything. Before they came to their senses, Xiao Wanru raised her watery eyes and directly made things difficult for Chu Qing, Commandery Prince Qing. Chapter 925. Chu Qing was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that Princess Chen, who looked delicate and gentle, would dare to make things difficult for him directly. A trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. Commandery Prince Qing is a member of the royal family. It's up to Commandery Prince Qing to decide who to marry or not to marry. No one else can make the decision for him. Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on Chu Qing's face lightly, as if she didn't see Old Madam's sudden change of expression. Of course, Chu Qing's marriage should be decided by himself. Even if he couldn't make the decision, his elders would make the decision. Besides the emperor in the palace, his elders were the empress and the empress dowager. Although Old Madam was noble, she couldn't make the decision for Chu Qing. Fifth Miss. Old Madam tried to stop Xiao Wanru in a cold voice. Grandma, Commandery Prince Qing is of royal blood and has a noble identity. How can we make the decision for him? Grandma is also hesitant, and I don't dare to say anything. The best way is to follow Commandery Prince Qing's decision. Xiao Wanru said unmoved. Her eyebrows were delicate. If she smiled slightly, she would make people feel that she was charming and delicate. However, if she slightly darkened her face, there would immediately be a sense of coldness, which diluted her original charm and made people not dare to look down on her. Although Chu Qing and Xiao Wanru had met before, they had just chatted for a while at that time, and he had always focused on Xiao Yanru. But now he took Princess Qin seriously. Princess Qin is right. I will go to the Imperial Palace to ask Imperial Grandmother to make a decision. Chu Qing nodded and agreed. Since Xiao Wanru mentioned the royal blood, he certainly couldn't show weakness and put all the blame on Marquis Xing's mansion. Old Madam held her breath and couldn't let it go for a while. Zhao Xiran reacted quickly and immediately became happy. That's the best. I will ask for Empress Dowager's decision. If Empress Dowager agreed, this matter would be settled. So be it, Old Madam said with a displeased look. Since the matter had been settled, Chu Qing stood up and said, Old Madam, I will go to the Imperial Palace to ask Imperial Grandmother first. After Imperial Grandmother gives the order, I will discuss this matter with your mansion. Outside the Imperial Palace, when Chu Qing called Empress Dowager Queen, he often called her Imperial Grandmother like other princes. Sorry to trouble you, Commandery Prince Qing. Old Madam was unhappy, but she had to show a polite smile. Chu Qing cupped his hands to Xiao Wanru again, then turned and strode away. Fifth young lady, second young lady and third young lady have agreed on this matter. Your second uncle also thinks it's a good idea. If it doesn't work out, I'm afraid that your two elder sisters will be ruined. Old Madam said with red eyes. Grandmother, don't cry. How could fifth younger sister not care? She doesn't want her younger sisters to live well. Zhao Xiran consoled. Qing, don't fifth sisters of fifth sister's words, is to her. fifth sister of Qing, and said, Qing, Qing, princess, Qing of Qing, Mu Mu, who of Prince Qing, of Qing, you of king of suddenly of her, of princess, except for Qing, was. But now, apart from her, who else can go to the imperial palace to see Empress Dowager immediately? Old Madam said in a daze. Fifth sister, how about you? Zhao Xiran looked embarrassed and turned to Xiao Wanru. It seemed that she didn't know what to do and wanted to ask Xiao Wanru for advice. In terms of her current identity, Xiao Wanru was indeed very suitable for this kind of idea, which was related to the royal family. Grandma, even the emperor can't go against Empress Dowager's decision. Xiao Wanru was not surprised that the two of them were echoing each other. Fifth sister. Zhao Xiran still wanted to play the emotional card, but was interrupted by Xiao Wanru rudely. Grandma, do you want to persuade Empress Dowager to change her mind? Third girl, who is willing to marry her now? Old Madam looked at Xiao Wanru and said, Qing, help her if you can. I know you are in a dilemma. You are also a new daughter-in-law, but I really have no choice. If we are still in Duke's mansion, I will beg Empress Dowager even at the cost of my dignity. But now, in this case, what about third girl? Fifth sister. Seeing that Old Madam was really dedicated to her sister, Xiao Kailing couldn't help but feel sad and looked at Xiao Wanru imploringly. Her sister's current situation was indeed not very good. Even her mother said that it was difficult for her third sister to find a good husband now, not to mention that her third sister was not young. Grandma, Commandery Prince Qing's mansion is not a beautiful place. Since second sister doesn't want to go there, she must have her reasons. Originally, second sister was very happy about this marriage. Xiao Wanru said calmly. Old Madam wanted to encourage everyone to force her to enter the imperial palace and be a guarantor for this matter. Not to mention that she had never had such an idea. Even if she had such an idea, she would never be manipulated by them at this time. It was not a day or two that Old Madam had a kind face but evil heart. Hearing what she said, Xiao Kailing immediately gave up. She looked at Old Madam in confusion and secretly glanced at her a few times. Others didn't know Xiao Jie's character, but everyone in the mansion knew it. She was mean, sinister, and opportunistic. She flattered the mother and daughter of the second branch shamelessly, but she was particularly vicious to those who were inferior to her. Would such a person really care about third sister and leave a good marriage for third sister, just as grandmother said? It seemed that she had to talk to her mother later and ask her mother to inquire more about it in case she fell into Xiao Jie's trap. Thinking of this, Xiao Kailing stopped interrupting. Although she was still paying attention to the movement in the room, she lowered her head and didn't want to interrupt anymore. Seeing her like this, Old Madam was so angry that her nose was about to smoke. The people of the third branch were really useless. Look at this girl. It was obvious that she was fighting for the interests of the third branch, but she seemed to be tied up and didn't say a word. Grandma, if there's nothing else, I'll go back first. Xiao Wanru stood up. Fifth miss, do you dislike me? Old Madam didn't achieve her goal, so her face darkened and her words became impolite. As a granddaughter, how dare I dislike you, Grandma? But when I came here just now, Prince told me to go back early. If I go back late, I'm afraid that Prince's medicine won't be used again. Prince has always been bad-tempered, so someone should remind him again and again to take medicine. Xiao Wanru said. She looked calm with a little worry. Everyone knew that Prince Luchan was in poor health. Some people also knew that Prince Luchan lost his temper, and Old Madam happened to be one of those people who knew it. She knew how much the Empress Dowager valued Prince Chen's health. Every time he was unwilling to take medicine, the Empress Dowager was so worried that she couldn't even eat. In the big world, Prince Chen's taking medicine was the most important thing. Next time when you go out, get the medicine for Prince Luchan first, so that he won't always use this reason. Although Old Madam had to let her go, she still said angrily. Yes. Xiao Wanru said, but it was obvious that she was not in the mood to answer. Old Madam was angry and sullen, but she couldn't do anything to Xiao Wanru. After all, Prince Chen was still waiting to take medicine. If she missed the time and hurt Prince Chen, she couldn't bear the responsibility. Seeing Xiao Wenru leave slowly with the servant girl, old madam picked up the teacup at hand and smashed it hard on the ground. She used too much force and smashed the Buddha beads she had worn on her hand. Some of the beads were broken and the pieces flew out. The room suddenly became quiet. Several attendants were trembling with fear as they looked at the broken Buddhist prayer beads on the ground. Their faces were deathly pale. When the Buddha beads were broken last time, several servants in the room were punished, including a favored principal servant girl. Old madam, don't be angry. We can think about it in the long run in the future. The fifth miss is Princess Chen now. Her identity is different, but the identity can also make our mansion more confident. Look, Commandery Prince Qing is here today, isn't he? Nanny Yu said with a smile and walked over to pick up the Buddha beads. Old madam, the beads on the top are not very good. But a few days ago, the monks of Huaguang Temple said that the string of Buddha beads you sent to consecrate was consecrated by the abbot. Now it is being worshipped. If you want to use it, you can go and get it tomorrow. It is consecrated by the abbot. How many people in the capital city can get the Buddha beads consecrated by the abbot of Huaguang Temple? Nanny Yu knew old madam's mind best. At this time, of course, she chose her favorite topic. Although she looked smiling, she secretly wiped a cold sweat. Fortunately, when she got the news a few days ago, she didn't have time to report it to old madam because she was busy. She wanted to find a suitable opportunity to say it, but now it happened. Grandma, you actually have the Buddha beads consecrated by the abbot of Huaguang Temple. That's great luck. I have long heard that the abbot of Huaguang Temple only consecrated people with great luck, but I have never seen it before. I didn't expect that you have such a good luck. Grandma, when you get the Buddha beads, you must show them to your granddaughter-in-law so that she can also benefit from you. Zhao Shiran said with a smile. She helped pick up the 2 beads that had fallen on the ground and sent them to old madam with a handkerchief. Old madam's face softened a little, and she scolded with an unkind face. Put it. This servant girl is more and more ignorant of her family background now. If there is no Marquis Xing's mansion, how can she climb the high branch of Prince Chen's mansion? Nanny Yu took the 2 beads handed over by Zhao Shiran, and then carefully placed them on the table in front of old madam. When she was about to persuade her, she suddenly heard old madam say to herself, No, I have to let this girl know that I can let her marry well, but I can also let her live a bad life. Being rejected by a junior, old madam felt that she had lost face. This girl didn't treat her as a grandmother, so she couldn't blame her for not treating her as a granddaughter. Nanny Yu was flustered. She moved her hand, and a bead almost fell to the ground. Chapter 926. Your Highness, old madam is very angry. When Yu Jie left, she deliberately glanced at old madam and saw the undisguised disgust in old madam's eyes. She was very worried. She and I have no friendship before. Xiao Wenru said casually. She just wanted to save face. They just looked good on the surface. Of course, Xiao Wenru was willing to maintain this good image for the time being. She still wanted to dig out more secrets from old madam and Marquis Xing's mansion. As for old madam, she had not regarded her as an elder since she had plotted against her again and again. The lesson she learned in the last life made her understand such a bloodline. The lesson of her last life made her understand that it was better to have no relatives. Old madam will harm you. Chu Lu also became uneasy. Has she ever not harmed me? Xiao Wenru said indifferently. She didn't feel uncomfortable at all when she mentioned old madam and didn't care too much about old madam. Since it was related to the bloodline, she didn't need to care about old madam. She would only resist old madam's means more fiercely. Old madam must know something about what happened in the past. Xiao Wenru didn't believe that she didn't know anything. But even if she knew something, she was still so mean and vicious to her brother and sister. She vowed to kill her brother and sister from Marquis Xing's mansion and make her brother and sister become the bloody mud paving the way for the second branch to rise. In the last life, she knew nothing, so she was deceived. In this life, how could she be manipulated and trampled on by these people? Your Highness, is the former heir not old madam's biological son? Yu Jie couldn't help but be surprised. If he was her biological son, how could he have such a mother? It doesn't matter whether he is or not. Xiao Wanru raised the corner of her mouth and showed a cold smile. In her heart, the glory and wealth of Marquis Xing's mansion, which she relies on, are the highest. With glory and wealth, old madam didn't care about anything else. Fifth sister, please wait a minute. Zhao Xiran caught up with her from behind. Because he ran in a hurry, he panted and called out, "Your Highness, please wait." The servant girl who followed her said loudly while supporting her. Xiao Wanru stopped and watched Zhao Xiran coming over in a hurry. "First sister-in-law, what else can I do for you?" When Zhao Xiran approached, Xiao Wanru asked calmly with indifference in her watery eyes. This person was also restless, but if it didn't concern her, she was willing to turn a blind eye to it. "Fifth sister, let me send you off." Zhao Xiran laughed. "Thank you, sister-in-law." Xiao Wanru nodded and walked casually. With her current status, it was the most appropriate thing for Zhao Xiran to send her out. "Fifth sister, don't be angry. Grandma is old and always has some thoughtlessness. She is also very concerned about the marriage of my sisters. What she said just now was not pleasant to hear. Please forgive her for the sake of Grandma's old age." Zhao Xiran followed Xiao Wanru out and tried to persuade her eagerly. Xiao Wanru pursed her lips and said lightly, "So what if I don't want to forgive you?" Zhao Xiran was almost choked by Xiao Wanru's words. She had imagined many reactions from Xiao Wanru. She could be aggrieved, indifferent, or angry. But she had never thought that Xiao Wanru would say such rebellious words. If the censor knew about it, if the censor knew that, with her status as Princess Chen, she would definitely be accused of being unfilial. "First sister-in-law, do you think I shouldn't have said that?" Xiao Wanru said lightly with a bit of leisurely smile, as if she didn't know how disobedient and unfilial what she had said just now was. "Fifth sister, don't say it casually. If others hear it, it will not be good and even affect Prince Chen's reputation." Zhao Xiran reacted and hurriedly lowered her voice. She looked around and breathed a sigh of relief when she found that no one was paying attention to them. "I'll just say it to you. You won't spread it out, right?" Xiao Wanru glanced at Zhao Xiran calmly. Her calm face showed no fear or panic at all. Zhao Xiran's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly felt that she had misjudged Princess Qin in front of her. Xiao Wanru might care about this little reputation before she got married, but what about Xiao Wanru who had married Prince Qin now? Would she still care about such a little reputation? Moreover, what she said just now was a warning to herself. Zhao Xiran was sure that if she revealed a word, she would not have a good life in the future. From some of the things she found out, Princess Chen was already very powerful before she got married. Now that she had Prince Chen's mansion as her backing, she was even more powerful. Before marrying into the family, Zhao Xiran didn't care about Xiao Wanru at all. She thought that Xiao Wanru was just a granddaughter who came back to reunite with her family. What she cared about was Xiao Yanru. The first Miss Xiao was really talented and beautiful and famous in the capital. Therefore, she casually schemed against Xiao Wanru. However, she didn't expect that she not only failed to deal with Xiao Wanru, but also irritated Xiao Caihuan, so that she not only lost face on the wedding day, but also fell out of favor with old madam. Later, after calming down and investigating carefully, she realized that she was wrong. The fifth Miss Xiao, who she thought was not powerful, was actually the most powerful. The fifth Miss Xiao, who lived in Marquis Xing's mansion quietly, lived a smooth life even though she was not liked by old madam and schemed against by madam of Marquis Xing. Moreover, she married Prince Chen, who was most favored by the Empress Dowager and the Emperor. "Fifth sister, don't worry. I'm not such an ignorant person." Zhao Xiran smiled a little awkwardly. She had thought that she had the initiative in her hands, but now she found that she actually had nothing in her hands. She needed to be more careful in front of Princess Qin in front of her. "Thank you, eldest sister-in-law. In the future, you will be in charge of the inner court of Marquis Xing's mansion. However, Madame of Marquis Xing is still recuperating on the mountain, and I don't know when she will come down the mountain. Before I return to the mansion, I heard that Madame of Marquis Xing and old Madame are as close as mother and daughter. After such a long time as a mother, she will definitely miss her daughter." Xiao Wanru said lightly. Zhao Xiran's eyes twitched, and a thought suddenly flashed in her mind. Her eyes became flustered. Madam of Marquis Xing, Jiang, was not in Marquis Xing's mansion now, and she didn't even come out when Xiao Hua and got married. In fact, no one believed her words about recuperating and recuperating. No matter how much she recuperated, she was not so sick that she couldn't get up. Why couldn't she even attend her son's wedding? Because of this, there were many rumors about Madam of Marquis Xing, and she didn't want Jiang to come back. No one wanted to have a mother-in-law for no reason. What's more, she was a troublesome mother-in-law. Mother is recuperating on the mountain. No matter how worried grandma is about mother's health, she can't come back. Zhao Xiran composed herself and said with a smile, "Is that what you think, first sister-in-law? You really underestimate Marquis Xing relying on her relationship with old Madam. Madam of Marquis Xing has been holding the backyard of Marquis Xing's mansion in the palm of her hand for so many years, which is not something that a woman from an ordinary family can do." Xiao Wanru said extremely calmly. "Fifth sister, you mean?" Zhao Xiran couldn't stand it anymore and asked cautiously. "What I mean? I don't mean anything. It's just that second aunt is in a bad mood and likes to torment people. If you invite second madam back, I'm afraid that you won't be able to make decisions in the future." Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and said meaningfully. Zhao Xiran was smart, and it was easy to talk to smart people. Looking at her thoughtful look, Xiao Wanru knew that she must be thinking of a way. "First sister-in-law, I'll go back first. Thank you for seeing me off." Xiao Wanru turned around and said with a smile when they were about to reach the parking place in front. "I'm not in a hurry. I'll see you off for another distance." Zhao Xiran said politely. "First sister-in-law, don't go. There will be dust when the carriage turns around later. You should stay far away from it," Xiao Wanru said with a smile. Then she walked to the carriage with the two maids. Zhao Xiran moved his feet and wanted to follow her. However, he felt that Xiao Wanru's words made sense, so he didn't force himself to follow her. After watching Xiao Wanru take a few more steps, Zhao Xiran suddenly became anxious and said loudly, "Fifth sister, I don't mean you any harm." Xiao Wanru stopped, but then slowly walked forward and said, "First sister-in-law, if you need any help in the future, I will help you if I can, but I hope that what you told me is the truth." "Fifth sister, don't worry. I will definitely tell you the truth," Zhao Xiran said in a hurry. "First sister-in-law, Marquis Xing's mansion is a secret mansion. You'd better be careful," Xiao Wanru said very softly, but Zhao Xiran heard it. Frowning, Zhao Xiran stood where she was and watched the two maids help Xiao Wanru get into the carriage. Then the low-key but luxurious carriage of Prince Chen's mansion turned around and slowly passed in front of her. Coincidentally, the distance between them was neither too far nor too close, just enough for her to eat the dust. Watching the carriage go away, Zhao Xiran narrowed her eyes slightly. She was also a cautious person and observed carefully. When the carriage turned around in front of her, she could see some dark patterns in the shape of butterfly wings on the corners of the carriage, which looked more like a carriage for a woman. There was no female master in Prince Chen's mansion, so it was impossible to specially prepare a carriage for a woman. Therefore, the carriage in front of her should be specially prepared by Prince Chen for Xiao Wanru. Prince Chen really treated Xiao Wanru differently. No wonder Xiao Wanru could challenge old madam now. What about her? Would she stand on old madam's side or Xiao Wanru's? If it was in the past, she might think that old madam's side was better. After all, old madam was righteous and was her elder. But now, thinking of Madame Jiang, Marquis Xing's wife, who was still in Yuhui nunnery, Zhao Xiran felt that no matter how well she treated old madam, she couldn't compare to the mother-daughter relationship between Madame Jiang and old madam for so many years. Chapter 927. Remember in 1 second, 800 $say, net there was no pop-up window for free reading. The carriage slowly passed in front of Zhao Xiran. Through the hanging screen window, Xiao Wanru also saw Zhao Xiran's absent-minded look. "Princess, do you want young madam to investigate something?" Thinking of Xiao Wanru's specious words just now, Yujie couldn't help asking. She also wants to investigate something herself. Xiao Wanru twitched the corner of her mouth and said, "She may not find anything about me, but now she is the most likely person in Marquis Xing's mansion to find something." Her words were a little tongue-twisting and not easy to understand, but the two servant girls were also smart people. They immediately knew that the new young madam was indeed the most useful person in Marquis Xing's mansion at present. First of all, this young madam was also a smart person. Secondly, this young madam seemed to enter Marquis Xing's mansion with ulterior motives. "Princess, what is young madam looking for?" Chu Lu asked curiously. "I don't know, but it's good to have her," Xiao Wanru said meaningfully. Now that she was married, it was not convenient for her to pay attention to the affairs of Marquis Xing's mansion. If Zhao Xiran was in it to stir up trouble, it would be more convenient for her to investigate things. She also had some speculations about Zhao Xiran. But in any case, Zhao Xiran was similar to her in one way. She certainly didn't want to have a mother-in-law who always stared at her, especially this mother-in-law who was very difficult to get along with. Unless it was necessary, she would not let her out of Yuhui Nunnery again. The carriage went all the way out of Marquis Xing's mansion, turned a corner, went around to the street, and stopped in a tea room opposite Butterfly Clothing Shop. Xiao Wanru got out of the carriage with a curtain hat on. She looked at Butterfly Clothing Shop diagonally opposite and did not go in. Instead, she turned back and entered the tea room. Chu Lu followed Xiao Wanru to serve her. Yu Jie did not go in but went to Butterfly Clothing Shop opposite. They went up to the second floor and asked for a private room by the window. Xiao Wanru took off the curtain hat and sat down. Chu Lu went to order some snacks such as fruits and snacks. The position of this window was good. She could see the Butterfly Clothing Shop opposite and clearly see a few sneaky people who had been paying attention to the Butterfly Clothing Shop. Xiao Wanru was going to go directly to the Butterfly Clothing Shop just now, but she turned into the tea room when she saw these people. Madame Dong hurried out of Butterfly Clothing Shop and coldly looked at a few sneaky people at the door. She walked across the street with a cold face, arrived at the tea house, and then went straight to the second floor. Those sneaky people seemed to want to follow them, but they stopped and looked up at the tea house. Xiao Wanru must have some scruples and didn't come over directly. Xiao Wanru looked downstairs thoughtfully. There was a knock on the door. Chu Lu went to open the door and saw Madame Dong with a cold and angry face. After entering the box, Madame Dong adjusted her face and looked a little better. "Princess, sit down first. Why are you being targeted?" Xiao Wanru turned around and asked with a smile. Madame Dong nodded. After sitting down opposite Xiao Wanru, she said angrily, "Your Highness, I've never seen such a person before. He even wants me to be a concubine. I was able to leave this ungrateful person at that time. Why does he think that I have to follow him now?" Thinking of what that man had said, the more Madame Dong thought about it, the more disgusted she felt. How could Wei Dehai be so shameless as to think that she had always been infatuated with him? Even if she was his mistress, it was also what she wanted. He even said that for so many years, she had never seen such a disgusting person. Wei Dehai is now a medium-sized official and has some real power in the Imperial court. I heard that his current identity is not ordinary, Xiao Wanru said with a faint smile. No matter how extraordinary he is, I don't like him, Madame Dong said with hatred. She deeply regretted that she had been blind to think that Wei Dehai was a good person. Moreover, when she was in Jiangzhou, she had thought of asking Wei Dehai to treat her daughter's leg injury and help her. How blind was such a cruel and unscrupulous person to entangle with him? Xiao Wanru picked up the teacup at hand, took a sip and said, "He found my aunt. It is said that he is related by blood. His relative is Nanny Wei, the Empress Dowager's right-hand woman. Although he is not a high-ranking official now, many officials dare not offend him." This was what she had asked Qing to investigate. Of course, part of the information was sent by Chu Luchen. Otherwise, how could Qing find out such a thing? The Empress Dowager's right-hand woman? Madame Dong's face changed. Yes, Nanny Wei, the Empress Dowager's right-hand woman. In the Palace of Benevolent Peace, Nanny Wei is very powerful. The Empress Dowager also listens to her and thinks highly of her. Xiao Wanru said meaningfully, "By chance, Nanny Wei met Lord Wei. They talked about something, and then we learned that they were not only from the same hometown, but also relatives. Lord Wei's father was Nanny Wei's elder brother or cousin. Aunt. Madame Dong frowned. It should be so. Xiao Wanru nodded. When I was with Wei Dahai, he said that he came to the capital city to look for my aunt, but he didn't find her. I don't know whether what he said was true or not. Now he actually found her. No wonder he dared to ask me to be his concubine despite his official position. Madame Dong said disdainfully. She really felt that this matter was a bit mysterious. With Nanny Wei's help, it is equivalent to being inferior to the Empress Dowager. Lord Wei's recent official career is neither high nor low, and his official fortune is neither good nor bad. But no one dares to target him, so he has a very good life. I heard that he has a relationship with Commandery Prince Qing now, and his life is getting better and better. Xiao Wanru said with a soft smile. Some things were not investigated, and they were really shocked when they were investigated. Who would have thought that after going around in circles, they would come back to the same place? He has a relationship with Commandery Prince Qing again? Madame Dong really didn't expect that there were so many twists and turns in it. Suddenly, she thought of something and her face changed. Does he think that this shop is mine? It's very likely. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and said leisurely, I rarely show up, especially in the past 3 years. I have basically been on the mountain of the Yuhui Nunnery and have never gone down the mountain. Even Yu Jie and Chu Lu, who are by my side, rarely go down the mountain. But you have come to the Yuhui Nunnery several times to offer incense. However, there are many women who go to the Yuhui Nunnery to offer incense, so it is not eye-catching. So, is it because of this shop that he wants to recognize me? Madame Dong's face turned livid and then turned pale. In the end, she was so angry that she almost wanted to find Wei Dahai immediately and make it clear to him. Butterfly Clothing Shop. According to what you said, you wanted to open such a shop with such a name at the beginning. Later, you didn't do it, and then you left. Now I see you again in the Butterfly Clothing Shop. After checking in the Butterfly Clothing Shop, I found that you have been alone since you came to the capital city, and there is no owner behind you. The so-called owner is just what you said. When others hear it, they are not sure whether it is true or not. Or you just want to spread such a word and let others think that you have a backer. Xiao Wanru analyzed with a smile. These words were related to Madame Dong's recent doubts. She always felt that Wei Dahai was not such an affectionate person. Moreover, so many years had passed and she was now old. Wei Dahai had nothing to covet from her. The child she gave birth to was only a daughter. Wei Dahai had his own children, so how could he take a fancy to Xiao? But now she figured it out. If she didn't have any profit to covet, Wei Dahai wouldn't think so highly of her and even let someone keep an eye on her. Although Madame Dong didn't expect much from Wei Dahai, she was still trembling with anger and her face turned pale because of his despicable character. Madame Dong, don't be angry. Wei Dahai doesn't have good intentions. He wants to take over your property and deal with you as his mistress. However, he doesn't dare to do such a thing in public. Xiao Wanru pointed to a few people under the window. They didn't leave and were still staring at the tea room. Obviously, they were still staring at Madame Dong. Your Highness, he is so short of money. Madame Dong also saw a few people below and was extremely angry. He should be very short of money. Xiao Wanru said with a vague smile. There were some things that Madame Dong didn't need to know. The more she knew, the worse it would be for her. She just needed to be a simple shopkeeper. If it weren't for such a coincidence, she would really think that this kind of thing had nothing to do with her. It could only be said that fate was wonderful. After such a big turn, the two people, who had thought that they would not have any contact in the future, could still be related. Xiao Wanru was surprised and thought of many things, especially that it was related to Commandery Prince Qing, Chu Qing. At least what happened in the Yuwei Nunnery was not completely groundless. If she was just an ordinary miss from an aristocratic family, even if this matter came around, it would have little to do with her. But she was not only the miss of Marquis Xing's mansion, but also Princess Qin now. This bitch! Madame Dong scolded with hatred and then looked at Xiao Wanru with burning eyes. Your Highness, what should I do now? Since the princess had intervened, it meant that the princess was in charge of this matter. Madame Dong was very relieved about this. With the princess around, No matter what kind of people behind Wei Dahai or what kind of ideas he had about her, the princess would definitely solve it. Madame Dong had unparalleled confidence in Xiao Wanru. Since he doesn't want to make it big, do you dare to make it big, Madame Dong? Xiao Wanru slightly raised the corners of her mouth, and her eyes darkened a little. There was a somewhat cold smile on her delicate face, which had a kind of piercing coldness, making her look no longer like a delicate flower in a greenhouse. I dare. With the princess around, why wouldn't I dare? Anyway, I don't intend to get married. Xiao is living a good life now. I don't want Xiao to know that she has such a shameless and incompetent father. Madame Dong gritted her teeth and resolutely stuck out her chest. She was really not afraid of making it big. She was a widow, and now she was alone. She had no requirements for the future, so what was she afraid of? Chapter 928. Several people who were watching Nanny Dong downstairs saw Nanny Dong coming down from the opposite tea room. They all looked at a man who looked like a manservant, as if they wanted him to make a decision. When Nanny Dong went to the opposite tea room, others wanted to follow her, but they were stopped by him. This manservant was Wei Dahai's personal manservant. These days he had been watching the door of Butterfly Clothing Shop. His purpose was to track Nanny Dong's whereabouts and see if there was anyone behind her. Everything in Butterfly Clothing Shop was indeed very attractive. Although the shop was not very big, it could be seen that the business was very good, and some things like buttons were also very exquisite. Although the manservant didn't know how to do needlework, he saw that there were many misses and madams from aristocratic families coming and going in the shop. They all came in happily and left happily. It was obvious that they were very satisfied with the shop. At first glance, he could tell that it was a shop that made a lot of money. That was great. Of course, this was not the only purpose of watching this place. It would be better if he could get some information about Butterfly Clothing Shop to threaten Nanny Dong. Then things would be easier. After giving a signal to the idlers who came, everyone dispersed and did what they should do. They just needed to keep an eye on Nanny Dong. As long as they kept an eye on her, they could always find something wrong. The manservant thought so and waved his hand at the idlers who came to find him. The idlers dispersed, looking very busy. The manservant was about to leave when he suddenly saw Nanny Dong walking straight toward him. His heart skipped a beat and he had a bad feeling. I have been watching Butterfly Clothing Shop these days. Did Nanny Dong find something? Thinking of this, he took a step back and turned around to leave. However, Nanny Dong had already arrived in front of him. She stretched out her hand and slapped the manservant hard. The slap made the manservant stagger a few steps and almost fall down. Hey, how can you hit me? The manservant managed to stand up and glared at Nanny Dong angrily. Tell Wei Dahai to stay away from me. Even if I'm blind, I won't marry him. Why does he think that he can force me to remarry if you keep an eye on this place? If he wants to change his wife, he doesn't need to look for me. I'm not interested in him. Madame Dong scolded harshly. She put her hands on her hips, looked at the crowd around her, and said fiercely, "Everyone, please be reasonable. I'm a widow. It's my own business whether I want to remarry or not. Do you really want to force me to marry?" Madame Dong's noise immediately alarmed the people on this section of the road. The business of Butterfly Clothing Shop was very good. Most of the people who came were misses and madams from aristocratic families. Forcing someone to remarry and even divorce his own wife? This servant was sent by that person? And you're being targeted? Which family does he belong to? How could there be such a slut? If I were his wife and heard such a thing, I would vomit blood and die of anger. The pedestrians on the roadside began to point and talk. Those who heard or didn't hear it all curiously listened to the footsteps. There were many meanings in Madame Dong's words. Thinking about it carefully, she felt that this matter was unusual. Who's this? Wei Dahai, Lord Wei? Someone had actually heard of Wei Dahai's name. He repeated the question with flickering eyes. Who is this Lord Wei? Someone with sharp ears had heard this sentence and immediately asked the person who knew it. That person actually didn't want to say it, but after being asked so many questions, he could only say casually, "Lord Wei is a good official. He wouldn't do such a thing." Why wouldn't he do such a thing? A person like Lord Wei would do such a thing. I heard that the beauties in his mansion are not good. His concubines are almost waiting for 10 concubines. Some people also knew Wei Dahai. They curled their lips and said disdainfully. Obviously, they didn't get along with Wei Dahai. What nonsense are you talking about? Seeing that the situation was not right, the manservant hurriedly defended himself. Is there anything wrong with what our shopkeeper said? You've been waiting outside every day these days. When you saw the people in our shop coming out, you tried to get close to them. You all asked about Madame Dong and her husband's family. Besides, you also boasted to us about how good your mansion is. You have nothing to do with us. Why are you guarding our shopkeeper? A worker from Butterfly Clothing Shop also squeezed out a job. He pointed at the person opposite and scolded loudly. In the past few days, Madame Dong was not the only one who had seen these people sneaking around. Go back and tell your master not to pester me. Whether your master wants to stop marrying or not, it has nothing to do with me. Madame Dong said angrily. Then she ignored the servant and turned to leave. Madame Dong was furious. Seeing that Madame Dong had left, the onlookers' attention fell on the manservant for a moment. Seeing that someone had already known his lord's name, the manservant didn't dare to stare at Madame Dong anymore. He turned around, pushed away the onlookers, and ran away. He ran to a place where there was no one. Finally, no one noticed him. Then he leaned against the corner of the wall and gasped for breath. When he calmed down, the manservant felt that something was wrong. He hurried to his mansion. Wei Dahai was discussing with his aides in the study. Hearing that the manservant he had sent out had come back, he asked him to go in and report. Your Excellency, shopkeeper Dong of Butterfly Clothing Shop said your name in front of many people just now. She also said that you want to stop marrying and marry again. But even if you want to stop marrying and marry again, she will not marry you. She asked you to give up. The manservant reported. What? Did she really say that? Wei Dahai's face turned ashen. If he said it like this, did he still want his face? Moreover, he didn't want to marry again. He only wanted to take Dong Ming's wife as an outer concubine. How could he let everyone know about this matter? The blue veins on Wei Dahai's forehead bulged. He had a hunch that the censor would report to him tomorrow. Shopkeeper Dong did say so. And there were a lot of onlookers at that time. Some people also mentioned your names. It seems that they know you. The manservant said timidly. Wei Dahai stood up in annoyance. He walked around in the study a few times and said, Go and call those idlers back. Don't keep an eye on Butterfly Clothing Shop for the time being. Wei Dahai didn't want things to get out of hand. He was originally just a mid-level official, and the people he interacted with in the past weren't the kind of powerful ministers. At most, there were 1 or 2 who were considered high-ranking officials, and the rest weren't very powerful. His current situation was also inconspicuous. This was the best. Wei Dahai didn't want to be conspicuous at all, especially at this time. He originally thought it was a very simple thing. He didn't expect that Dong Ming's wife was so ruthless. She would rather ruin her own reputation and expose him. So he didn't dare to do it again. He could only let it go first. Yes, Your Excellency. The manservant breathed a sigh of relief, turned around and ran out. Your Excellency, are you going to let her go? A middle-aged man sitting by the window looked at Wei Dahai, who was annoyed coldly. The business of Butterfly Clothing Shop is very good. Wei Dahai's eyes flickered a few times, and he said unwillingly. The business of Butterfly Clothing Shop is very good. But you can't do it now. Since the shopkeeper dares to offend you, if you push her too hard, I'm afraid that she will fight with you to the death. Moreover, in the capital city, there are many officials at your level and higher than you. The only difference is that you are related to Nanny Wei. The middle-aged man said slowly, with some unclear meaning in his expression. Wei Dahai slammed his hand on the table heavily and said, She is just a little girl. Can she really push me? Your Excellency, what are you going to do? The previous method is definitely not feasible. The middle-aged man asked. Wei Dahai was stunned for a moment. He frowned and looked at the middle-aged man. Sir, what do you want to tell me? Since the shopkeeper is so tough and doesn't care about the childhood friendship with you, Your Excellency, Why do you still care about this friendship? The middle-aged man said. Why do you say that? Wei Dahai heard some meaning and felt a little calmer. Since she doesn't like you, Your Excellency, let her do it herself. The middle-aged man said with a sinister smile. It's just a small shop. Even if the business is good, it's very easy to deal with it without a big backer. Even if Your Excellency doesn't show up, you can still deal with it in other ways. Should I deal with Dong Mingyang? Wei Dahai asked. As long as others don't know about Milord, it's fine. In the future, if the shopkeeper comes to beg Milord can do whatever he wants. Not to mention the shopkeeper herself, even the shop behind her can't be controlled by Milord with just a word. She will be the one who takes the initiative and no one will say anything. Even if she casually keeps the shop outside the house, who will know? Since she takes the initiative, she won't cause any trouble. The middle-aged man suggested. Wei Dahai nodded repeatedly and thought it was a good idea. Who will do it? Your Excellency, don't you have a good relationship with Marquis Xing? It was Marquis Xing who reminded Your Excellency about the shopkeeper surnamed Dong. Since a guest doesn't bother two hosts, why don't Your Excellency ask Marquis Xing to think of a way? The middle-aged man thought for a while and felt that this was the best way, and the reason was the most sufficient. Marquis Xing was also a person who knew the past. It was normal for a man to be deeply in love for so many years. Moreover, Marquis Xing knew the past, so it was not unexpected. Marquis Xing may not help. Wei Dahai shook his head and said, he used to be very arrogant. When I was young, I had a good relationship with him. Later, after he got the title of Duke Xing, he gradually drifted away from me and almost had no contact with me. This time he took the initiative to tell me about Dong Mingyang, which was originally very unexpected. Marquis Xing had a hard time in the last years. If it was in the past, he might not take a look at you. But now it's different. Since he took the initiative to reach out to you, Your Excellency, why don't you hold it? A powerful aristocratic family like Marquis Xing has a strong foundation. Even though it seems to be declining on the surface, it is actually different from others. Marquis Xing's mansion has been unlucky recently, and everything is not going well. Many people who used to be close to Marquis Xing have become distant for a while. Your Excellency, it's obvious that you want to ask him for help at this time. Marquis Xing will help you. To deal with a shopkeeper, this kind of thing doesn't need to be done by the officials at all. Even some other shops will be enough. The middle-aged man said meaningfully, clearly analyzing Xiao Jing's situation and the current psychology of Marquis Xing. If Xiao Jing were here and heard the middle-aged man's words, he would definitely be shocked. How could an aide of a minor official be so capable? Chapter 929. When the Empress Dowager delivered the decree, Xiao Wanru was playing chess with Chu Luchen. Hearing the Empress Dowager's summon, Chu Luchen stood up, shook his robe and said, I'll go with you. Your Highness, you'd better not go. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, stood up, and threw the chess pieces in her hand into the chess basket aside. What's the matter? Chu Luchen looked at Xiao Wanru and knew that she knew what to do, but he couldn't help teasing her. Didn't I tell you about the marriage of second sister and third sister before I went to the Marquis's mansion? Xiao Wanru squinted at him and said. Then she walked to the dressing table and sat down. Because of the two of them, the other maids in the room had left. Chu Luchen walked behind Xiao Wanru, picked a sapphire hairpin for her, gently inserted it into her bun, and then gently helped her up. Don't you need me to go there? Your Highness, you'd better not go. If the Empress Dowager sees you following me around, she will not be happy. Xiao Wanru smiled and looked at Chu Luchen in the mirror. He was as beautiful as the moon and incomparably handsome. She couldn't help raising the corners of her mouth slightly. It was great to marry him. Well, go ahead. If you can't solve it, just delay it. Chu Luchen looked at the girl in the mirror and said with a smile. But Xiao Wanru answered, feeling warm in her heart. They still went through the side door, and the people sent by the Empress Dowager to announce the decree also went through the side door. Since Xiao Wanru married into Prince Chen's mansion, she entered the palace through this door more often than going around the front. The nanny who led the way was very polite to Xiao Wanru. Of course, it was because of Chu Luchen. Chu Luchen was the most favored by the Empress Dowager, so her status as Princess Qin had risen a lot. Going out from the side door and passing by Chuxiu Palace, Xiao Wanru suddenly thought of Madame Chu, the female painter who had painted for the beauties. "Nanny, do you know if the painters who painted for the beauties are here?" Xiao Wanru looked in the direction of Chuxiu Palace casually and asked. Knowing that Princess Qin had also participated in the show, Nanny smiled and said, "I heard that the painters haven't left yet. His Majesty thinks that their paintings are good, so he specially asked them to paint a few more beauties." "Beauty painting? Who are you going to give it to?" Xiao Wanru was stunned and asked subconsciously. All the princes had arranged marriages this time. "I've heard that it's Prince Ching, but some say it's not him. It's said that he's taken to the Su country." "I'm not sure," Nanny answered. "Envoy from Su country?" A thought came to Xiao Wanru's mind. In her last life, she didn't go to Su country as an envoy, but she seemed to have some memories about Su country. It seemed that she had married a princess from Su country to Su country. She didn't know whether that memory was related to Chu Luchen or not, because she almost had no memory of it in her mind. However, just now, his heart suddenly jolted. Something in the depths of his memory was stirred, causing a ripple to appear. She reached out to press her forehead. She was really helpless about the memory of her last life. Why was it that when it came to Chu Liuchen's memory, she seemed to be shrouded in clouds? She could only grope forward without giving any advice. It seemed that a woman appeared in her memory. She didn't know whether she was a woman from the capital city or the Su country. There seemed to be a marriage, but the marriage was not successful. However, she couldn't remember the specific details. "Your Highness, do you feel uncomfortable? Do you want to take a rest?" "Rest?" Empress Dowager said that if you're tired, you can walk slower. Nanny misunderstood Xiao Wanru's action and slowed down with a smile. Regarding Princess Qin, none of the servants in the Empress Dowager's palace dared to neglect her. They had seen with their own eyes that Prince Qin, who had never shown his emotions on his face, was full of tenderness when he mentioned this princess, which was different from the gentleness that kept people thousands of miles away in the past. What Prince Qin cared about, the Empress Dowager would definitely care about. Today, the Empress Dowager specially ordered Princess Qin to come slowly. In the past, when the Empress Dowager announced the decree, she would never let anyone come slowly. Everyone came in a hurry for fear of delaying the Empress Dowager's decree. This Princess Qin was unique. Even if Prince Yu and Prince Zhou got married in the future, Princess Qin would still be unique. However, it could be seen from the Empress Dowager's unique love for Prince Qin. Since Nanny didn't urge her, Xiao Wanru slowed down. As she walked, she tried to recall those things. However, no matter how she thought about it, she was still confused. Who on earth got married? It was related to the Su country. Did the Su country marry a princess? Or did the princess of this dynasty marry to the Su country? If it wasn't a powerful marriage, she wouldn't have known it at that time. It must be a famous marriage. Could it be Chu Liuchen's? Thinking of this, she felt inexplicably uncomfortable. It seemed that as long as she thought that Chu Liuchen had married someone else in his last life, she would feel bitter and uncomfortable. A graceful young woman came out from the corner, followed by a palace maid. When she saw Xiao Wanru, she was stunned for a moment and showed a trace of surprise on her delicate face. It seemed that she didn't expect to meet Xiao Wanru here. Imperial Consort Qin? The young woman smiled softly with a gentle expression. She looked a little familiar, but when she looked carefully, she couldn't recognize who she was because she had never seen her before. "You are." Xiao Wanru raised her watery eyes and showed a trace of confusion on her face. She stopped to look at the woman in front of her and looked her up and down. "Your Highness, this is Zhao Yidi." Nanny reminded and bowed to Zhao Yidi first. Although she was polite, she didn't flatter her. The palace maids in the Empress Dowager's palace were all confident. Zhao Yidi was the daughter of a concubine in Duke Yong's mansion. It was said that Zhao Yidi had just entered the palace for a few years. Since she entered the palace, she had been favored and could be regarded as the favorite concubine in the palace. Zhao Yi's rank was not as high as Princess Chen's, but Zhao Yidi was the emperor's servant and Xiao Wanru's elder. "Are you going to see the Empress Dowager?" Zhao Yidi took a step back, politely made way and asked softly. The Empress Dowager summoned me, Xiao Wanru said lightly. No wonder she looked a little familiar. It turned out that it was because of Madame D. Zhao Di in front of her was much prettier and younger than Madame D, but there were some similarities between her eyes. It was said that she was the daughter of the old Duke Yong's concubine and was a favored concubine. However, after the old Duke Yong passed away, this concubine died not long after, leaving only this little daughter who grew up in front of Duke Yong's old madam. Because she was a girl and very beautiful, Duke Yong's old madam did not treat her badly and raised her wholeheartedly. Later, when she entered the palace to attend the consort selection, she was chosen by the emperor and conferred the title of Zhaoi. Xiao Wanru did not expect to see Zhao Di here, and Zhao Di was so gentle. Please go first, Zhao Di said with a smile. You're welcome, Zhao. Xiao Wanru said very politely, but she just said it. She moved her feet and walked slowly in front of Zhao Di. She glanced at Zhao Di's face and found that Zhao Di was still smiling kindly without any displeasure. In the last life, when Xiao Wanru entered the palace, Zhao Di was still favored. Even in front of Xiao Yenru, it was said that Zhao Di was not inferior to Xiao Yenru, but she had always been a Zhaoi. At that time, Xiao Yenru was also in the same position. In the last life, Xiao Wanru had never seen Zhao Di and had no contact with her, so she knew nothing about Zhao Di. It was the same now, but she was sure that Zhao Di deliberately came to stop her. This place was just past Chuxiu Palace, and no one would come here in the past. Chuxiu Palace was for the beauties to live in during the consort selection, so there were usually few people. Although the scenery here was good, compared with other places in the Imperial Palace, it was not outstanding at all and there was nothing special about it. It was impossible for Zhao Di to come so far to Chuxiu Palace. Moreover, this place was close to the Nangong Palace, where it was said that several princes were given a place to rest. It was not suitable for her to meet several princes. She stopped and looked back. Zhao Di was still standing there and looking at her. Seeing her turn around, she smiled softly and looked gentle, which made people think that she was a gentle and beautiful woman at first glance. This kind of gentleness was different from what Xiao Yenru had shown before. It seemed that there was no sharpness in her, which made people unable to be hostile to her. Moreover, she was so polite and didn't look arrogant like a favored concubine. Xiao Wanru also smiled at Zhao Di and left slowly. Looking at Xiao Wanru's back, Di Zhaoi's eyes fell on her. Even after Xiao Wanru disappeared, she still had a slight smile on her face. Your Highness, she has left. The palace maid reminded her. Okay, let's go back. Zhao Di said softly and turned back to walk on the way Xiao Wanru left. Your Highness, we are here to see Princess Jin today. Why don't you talk to her more? Didn't the Earl say? The palace maid said in confusion. Before she finished her words, she was gently interrupted by Zhao Di. I just want to see Princess Jin. I heard that Princess Jin was chosen by Prince Jin himself. I don't know what kind of woman can make Prince Jin fall in love with her. Now it seems that she is indeed exceedingly beautiful. Even in the Imperial Palace, no one has such a beautiful appearance. Your Highness, although the most favored person in the Imperial Palace needs a beautiful appearance, it is not just a beautiful appearance. The palace maid was not convinced for her master. Her master was also very beautiful, and it was this kind of beauty that was not sharp. The emperor liked her master who was not aggressive the most. The palace maid felt that her master was not inferior to Chen Wangfei at all. Princess Jin is blessed. Zhao Di shook her head and said with a self-deprecating smile, how can I compare with Princess Jin? Your Highness, why can't you compare with her? You just don't want to compare with others. Even Prince Jin? The palace maid became increasingly unconvinced on behalf of her master. Silence. Have you forgotten what can and can't be said in the Imperial Palace? Zhao Di's face darkened, and the smile on her face faded, showing a bit of fierceness. Yes, Your Highness, I made a slip of the tongue. The palace maid hurriedly lowered her head and seemed to think of something. Her face suddenly turned pale. Chapter 930. In the Palace of Benevolent Peace, the Empress Dowager looked at Chu Qing, who was kneeling in front of her, with a gloomy face. She could not hide the disappointment in her eyes. Since Chu Qing was her eldest son's biological son, how could she not take care of him? It was just that the throne was in chaos and it was the time for chaos. It was better for her to behave herself at this time. Chu Qing was not Chu Luchen. He had not been raised by the emperor since he was a child and was given the identity of a prince by the emperor. Moreover, he had been weak and sickly since he was a child. There were several times when he was pulled back from the brink of death. The emperor had seen it for real, and he had stayed outside worriedly. The emperor was really worried about his health. Moreover, Chu Liuchen's identity, although Chu Luchen, who had such an experience, and Chu Qing, who suddenly appeared, were both the former emperor's sons in name, they were actually the same. Empress Dowager clearly knew that if Chu Luchen wanted to take the throne, the emperor would not do anything to him. As long as his health allowed and he was willing, the emperor would be willing to give him a chance. Chu Qing was different. The Empress Dowager was very clear that if he dared to stretch out his hand, the emperor would definitely cut off his hand. Moreover, there was another point that made the Empress Dowager feel that the person in front of her was a little suspicious. This was also the reason why the Empress Dowager had always been suspicious in her heart. Was Chu Qing really the son of the late emperor? The things she knew before didn't seem to be like this. This was also an important reason why Chu Qing had been raised in the Yuhui nunnery for so many years without being suspected. Was she really pregnant and entered the Yuhui nunnery? Imperial noble consort Yu was favored as soon as she entered the palace. But at that time, the late emperor was already exhausted. After the late emperor passed away, the Empress Dowager followed the rules and sent the S who had no children at that time to the Yuhui nunnery to cultivate. The Empress Dowager still remembered that she was in charge at that time. Those S cried and kowtowed to her, and then they were taken away. As the most favored concubine, Imperial noble concubine Yu was the first one to kowtow to her. Since she was pregnant at that time, why didn't she say it? Was it really because she was afraid that others would hurt the child in her belly? Of course, she could also say that she didn't know she was pregnant. In fact, the Empress Dowager didn't quite believe it, but for some selfishness, she didn't ask this Imperial noble consort Yu, who was now the old princess of Commandery Prince Qing. Since Chu Qing became Commandery Prince Qing, the Empress Dowager had never summoned this old princess of Commandery Prince Qing. Originally, this doubt was buried in his heart. At least the late emperor did not lack sons. However, Chu Qing's hand had clearly crossed the line. Do you want the lineal daughter of the third branch of Marquis Xing's mansion to be a concubine? Empress Dowager asked again, as if she wanted to confirm her thoughts. Empress Dowager, it's not my idea. It's the idea of old Madam of Marquis Xing's mansion. I think it was the second miss who had an accident at that time, and I can't let her down. But the second miss seems to look down on me. Marquis Xing's mansion wants to send the third miss to my mansion because of the current situation of the third miss. Chu Qing lowered his head and reported. His words were very tactful, without any intention of his, and he put all the blame on Marquis Xing's mansion. Before entering the imperial palace, he did feel that marrying the daughter of the lineal descent would bring him a lot of benefits. No matter how beautiful she was, at least she was the daughter of the lineal descent and would be of great help to him in the future. After all, it was not good to marry a useless daughter of a concubine. Moreover, he didn't like Xiao Jie very much. He didn't like her at the beginning, and now he disliked her even more. At the thought of this, he felt very aggrieved. At the beginning, it was Xiao Yanru, the eldest daughter of the lineal descent, who looked down on him, so she pushed Xiao Jie, the useless daughter of a concubine. What was the use of a daughter of a concubine to take the blame? It could be seen that Xiao Jie was not important in Marquis Xing's mansion at all. How could the ambitious Chu Qing bear it? Therefore, after this incident, he had never visited Marquis Xing's mansion, nor did he intend to give a clear explanation to Marquis Xing's mansion. Anyway, he just wanted to put it off. Marquis Xing's mansion also admitted what had happened in the imperial palace. Was he afraid that Marquis Xing's mansion would deny it? Now because of Chu Liuchen's words, he specially went to Marquis Xing's mansion, which could be regarded as giving Chu Luchen face. Of course, It would be better if others thought that he and Chu Luchen were on good terms. They both married the Mrs. of Marquis Xing's mansion. They were brothers and brothers-in-law, which was also a good thing. What Chu Qing didn't expect was that he was despised by a daughter of a concubine. As long as he thought of this, he didn't want Xiao Jie anymore. The daughter of the lineal wife of the third branch was better than an ignorant daughter of a concubine. How dare you, a little daughter of a concubine, look down on the heir of the royal family? Empress Dowager understood the meaning of Chu Qing's words. Her face became colder and colder, and the teacup in her hand fell heavily on the ground. It was one thing for her to look down on Chu Qing, but she absolutely could not allow an outsider to embarrass Chu Qing. No matter how Chu Qing was not, he was now her eldest son. Empress Dowager, this is what Marquis Xing's mansion means. They also said that third miss is pitiful. Chu Qing showed a trace of grievance at the right time. Xiao Caihuan was pitiful? In fact, Xiao Caihuan was indeed pitiful. She entered the Imperial Palace to attend the consort selection, but was framed. Moreover, it seemed that she was framed because they wanted to hurt Xiao Wanru. From this point of view, Xiao Caihuan was indeed very wronged and suffered an undeserved disaster. From this point of view, Marquis Xing's mansion's request was not too excessive. Empress Dowager, Princess Qin is here. A palace maid came in and reported softly. Let her in. Empress Dowager nodded and the palace maid left. After a while, Xiao Wanru came in with the palace maid. After she bowed, Empress Dowager asked her to sit down. Princess Qin, do you know what happened in Marquis Xing's mansion today? Empress Dowager did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Old Madam called me over just now, and I happened to meet them talking about this matter. Xiao Wanru replied softly in a gentle and calm manner. She was not flustered by Empress Dowager's rebuke. Seeing that she was calm, Empress Dowager's face eased a little and she asked, "What do you think?" She put the blame on Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru did not want to say anything about this matter. It was the same when she was in Marquis Xing's mansion, and it was the same now. She glanced at Commandery Prince Qing opposite her and said, Commandery Prince Qing should make his own decision. She put the blame on Chu Qing again. This kind of thing was not just what was seen at the moment. If there were no benefits, Xiao Jing and Xiao Jie were not easy to get along with. There must be other reasons for them to give in willingly. However, Empress Dowager seemed to be determined to make her express her opinion. She was unmoved and said, "Which one do you think is more suitable for Commandery Prince Qing, your second sister or your third sister?" She didn't want Xiao Wanru to escape. Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice, and her eyes were dark. The dark color of her hair did not diminish her beauty. Instead, it made her look like she was being covered up by elegance. Her long hair accentuated her exquisite facial features, but at the same time, she exuded a dignified and appropriate air that was different from her coquettish beauty. Compared with the eldest daughter of lineal descent from an aristocratic family, she was not inferior but more beautiful. Empress Dowager's mood suddenly improved a little. In any case, she had married a good daughter-in-law for Qin, who was also a daughter-in-law he was satisfied with. Now, she wanted to test Xiao Wanru's attitude. Empress Dowager really didn't care who entered Commandery Prince Qing's mansion. No matter who it was, it had little influence on Empress Dowager. Instead, she cared about Xiao Wanru's attitude very much. Seeing Empress Dowager's attitude, Xiao Wanru thought for a while and had already made up her mind. Since Empress Dowager insisted on her expressing her opinion, she naturally had something to say. Second sister is a daughter of a non-lineal descent. She has always listened to big sister's words. Since she was a child, she has always followed big sister's orders, but she is not very close to other sisters. Because she is second uncle's daughter, even if she is a daughter of a non-lineal descent, the mansion will still look up to her. Third sister is third uncle's daughter, the eldest daughter. She gets along well with the other sisters, but has a little discord with second sister. Perhaps it's because they are the daughters of the first wife and concubine. Third sister has been very depressed ever since something happened to her in the palace. She even caused some trouble during eldest brother's wedding. Now, The two of them are copying Buddhist scriptures in the temple hall. Everyone knew the reason why they were copying Buddhist scriptures. Hearing that both of them were copying Buddhist scriptures, Chu Qing's face darkened. Originally, he thought that even though the third miss was not good-looking, she was at least a good one. Now it seemed that there was something wrong with the third Mississippi. If so, he might as well let the daughter of a non-lineal descent marry into the mansion. Empress Dowager was very satisfied with Xiao Wanru's implicit straightforwardness. From this point of view, Xiao Wanru was also on Chu Liuchen's side and not wholeheartedly for Marquis Xing's mansion. Since Xiao Wanru married Chen, of course, she should wholeheartedly serve Chen. Her previous family background was not as important as Chen. In particular, Empress Dowager regarded Chu Liuchen as a treasure. How could she allow Xiao Wanru not to put Chu Liuchen first? At present, it seemed that Xiao Wanru was sincere and didn't think highly of Marquis Xing's mansion. This was good. Since her grandson liked Xiao Wanru, Empress Dowager also wanted Xiao Wanru to serve her grandson wholeheartedly, so that she wouldn't feel sorry for her grandson. Commandery Prince Qing, do you understand what Princess Chen said? Empress Dowager stopped making things difficult for Xiao Wanru and turned to ask Chu Qing. From Xiao Wanru's words, it was easy to conclude that Xiao Jie was definitely not a good person. As a daughter of a non-lineal descent, Xiao Jie's mansion actually thought highly of her. Moreover, she was not close to other sisters and was not the kind of person who would sacrifice herself for her sisters. It seemed that she had someone else to cling to, so she behaved like this. Empress Dowager was becoming more and more dissatisfied with Marquis Xing's mansion. Did they really think that the descendants of the royal family were radishes and cabbages that they could pick and choose at will? Moreover, they were two good-for-nothing girls. Empress Dowager had later investigated what had happened in the Imperial Palace and found that this third Miss Xiao was actually not completely innocent. Chu Qing raised his head to look at Xiao Wanru and then at Empress Dowager. The purpose of his visit to the Imperial Palace today was not only to let someone enter his mansion, but also to see Empress Dowager's attitude. Chapter 931. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign /say, net wonderful pop-up window free reading. At present, the Empress Dowager's attitude was very important. Chu Qing knew that he was not favored by the emperor now. It would be best if he could start from the Empress Dowager. The former emperor might not be so important to the emperor, but it was different for the Empress Dowager. After all, he was the eldest son of the Empress Dowager, and he was a very promising eldest son. Such an identity was destined to make the Empress Dowager think highly of the son left by the eldest son. Chu Qing had always been unwilling to accept the Empress Dowager's favor for Chu Liuchen. If he also won the Empress Dowager's favor, the emperor would definitely treat him differently, and he could also make great achievements. But now the emperor had been lukewarm to him, and such an identity and status also made the officials stay away from him. In addition, without the Empress Dowager's favor, Chu Qing's path was more difficult than he had imagined. Now it was an opportunity for the Empress Dowager to help him make the decision and take care of him. Even if it was only a trivial matter, it would make the officials change their opinion of him slowly. He stood up, knelt down in front of the Empress Dowager, and said, "Please make a decision, Empress Dowager." He pushed this matter to the Empress Dowager. He pushed his marriage to the Empress Dowager without reservation, as if he would let the Empress Dowager make the decision. It was a kind of wholehearted trust. The Empress Dowager was silent for a while, but this time she did not stay silent for a long time. She said slowly, "No matter what Marquis Xing's mansion plans, do what you should do." "I understand," Chu Qing said respectfully, and did not disobey the Empress Dowager's words at all. Seeing his extremely respectful look, the Empress Dowager sighed and said, "Get up first. In the future, you can call me Imperial Grandmother like other princes." "Yes." Chu Qing's eyes turned red and he was extremely excited. He turned his head, afraid that the Empress Dowager would see his excitement. He hurriedly wiped the corners of his eyes and then said, "Thank you, Imperial Grandmother." This was the first time that he had called the Empress Dowager Imperial Grandmother in front of her, which represented the Empress Dowager's recognition. After Chu Qing sat down, The Empress Dowager asked. Since this matter has been decided, you can go and propose marriage. How's the family you've decided on? That family is not a powerful family because we made a reservation a long time ago. They are just keeping their promise, Chu Qing said meekly. The Empress Dowager was more and more satisfied with his attitude. How are the preparations for the wedding? The Empress Dowager didn't ask about this at all. I'm already picking a date. Once I'm done, I'll show it to Imperial Grandmother. That's good. The concubine is different from the princess. After the princess marries, the concubine can marry. You can go to Marquis Xing's mansion to make the betrothal gifts first. She is just a concubine, so you don't have to do anything. Besides, Marquis Xing's mansion has to thank you for this. The Empress Dowager seemed to have something else to say. Xiao Wanru glanced at Chu Qing calmly and saw that there was still a trace of tears at the corner of his eyes. He looked at the Empress Dowager very amiably. Anyone would think that the grandson in front of him was devoted to his grandmother. No matter what his grandmother said, he would agree. He was an extremely filial child. Sure enough, Chu Qing didn't disappoint Xiao Wanru. He nodded repeatedly, like an ordinary grandson talking to his grandmother. Yes, Imperial Grandmother. Imperial Grandmother, you're right. I'll listen to Imperial Ancestor. I'm a woman. The grandmother and grandson seemed to be very amiable. Although they didn't get along as well as the relationship between the Empress Dowager and Chu Luqian in the past, it was absolutely warm. As for who the betrothal gifts were, old Madame of Marquis Xing's mansion still wanted Xiao Wanru to take the initiative to plead for Xiao Zaihuan. Xiao Wanru didn't think it was a good thing. Although Xiao Zaihuan had once wanted to harm her, she just took advantage of the situation. In the current situation, it seemed that she had really given up on Chu Luqian. In this case, Xiao Wanru was not willing to be a pushback. Chu Qing was definitely not a good match for her. Her cheap second uncle wanted to find another person with a higher status. She would not let him succeed. The Empress Dowager made the decision for Chu Qing, which was like a nail on the board. No matter how old Madame and Xiao Jing struggled, it couldn't be changed. As for who Prince Qing would be, she wanted to see who else would jump out at this time. After talking with Chu Qing for a while, the Empress Dowager sent Chu Qing out and deliberately asked Xiao Wanru to stay. After Chu Qing left, the palace maids served tea again. The Empress Dowager held the teacup and fell silent. Her eyes fell thoughtfully on the tea in the cup and she frowned slightly. Xiao Wanru sat aside calmly and waited for the Empress Dowager to speak. After a long while, she heard the Empress Dowager say, "How is Qin'er now?" "Empress Dowager, His Highness is much better now. He should be fine." Xiao Wanru replied softly. Her attitude was very gentle, but she was very decent and calm. "Qin'er has always been in poor health. Although he is better now, you must be careful. This child has always been willful and doesn't pay attention to his health at ordinary times. Now that you have married into Prince Chen's mansion, you must pay more attention to his health. Take his health as the most important thing. Don't be reckless." The Empress Dowager raised her head and looked at Xiao Wanru and said. Her eyes fell on Xiao Wanru's beautiful face, and her eyes involuntarily darkened. In fact, such a beautiful face was not necessarily a blessing. However, since Qin'er liked it, she certainly had to protect it. "I have long known that you are the granddaughter of and great elder princess, but you used to be the fourth lineal daughter of Marquis Xing's mansion. Although your father used to be the former heir of Duke Xing, he is nothing now. But now your identity is different. You are Princess Qin and are closely related to Prince Qin. If Prince Qin is fine, you will also be fine." "I understand. I will definitely think of Prince Qin and won't implicate His Highness because of the affairs of Marquis Xing's mansion." Xiao Wanru answered without hesitation in a soft voice with a bit of firmness. She looked at the Empress Dowager with a pair of watery eyes, and her appearance was shocking but convincing. "In the past, you were not so close to Marquis Xing's mansion, which was not a good thing for you in the past. But in the future, if Marquis Xing's mansion comes to you for something, you should keep an eye on it and don't implicate Prince Chen's mansion. Qin'er is in poor health, so you can't be too worried." A smile appeared on the Empress Dowager's face, and her face became gentle. She was different. Although they were both beautiful women, it was obvious that Xiao Wanru in front of her was more like a responsible legal wife. There were many weak women in the royal family, especially the kind of weak women who had no opinions at all. They only knew how to obey, which was not a blessing. Especially the women who used to be the legal wife. The Empress Dowager, who was worried about Xiao Wanru's appearance, was slowly relieved. At least such a thing would not happen to Chen. Imperial Grandmother, don't worry. Imperial Grandmother, you should know how Marquis Xing's mansion treats me. Although I was born in Marquis Xing's mansion, I am closer to you, and you are sincerely doing this for me. Xiao Wanru lowered her head, and tears gathered in her long eyes, and her face fell. The resentment between Marquis Xing's mansion and Xiao Wanru had been brought to the Empress Dowager several times. How could the Empress Dowager not know it? She didn't care about old Madame of Marquis Xing's mansion's ignorance. In terms of bloodline, was Xiao Wanru's bloodline the noblest? However, old Madame of Marquis Xing valued the second branch. In the past, the Empress Dowager couldn't intervene in this kind of thing. After all, it was the internal affairs of Marquis Xing's mansion. Although the Empress Dowager was noble, she had to be impartial and couldn't be partial to Xiao Wanru because of and great elder princess. But now it was different. Xiao Wanru's identity was enough to make people understand that she was more noble than anyone in Marquis Xing's mansion. Marquis Xing's mansion had begun to go downhill. The Empress Dowager didn't want Marquis Xing's mansion to bring trouble to Xiao Wanru. At present, it was best that Xiao Wanru was not close to Marquis Xing's mansion. In the future, your second sister will marry into Commandery Prince Qing's mansion, but she is just a concubine, different from your legal wife. The Empress Dowager reminded Xiao Wanru. Imperial Grandmother, I understand. In my husband's family, only because of the identity of the husband's family, the legal wife can be regarded as sisters. As for the concubine, Xiao Wanru paused for a moment and then said with a smile, as for the concubine, of course, she can't be regarded as sisters. A concubine should act like a concubine. Before entering Commandery Prince Qing's mansion, Xiao Jie had already aroused the Empress Dowager's dissatisfaction. Xiao Wanru was very happy. Xiao Jie had never been a law-abiding person, and her cheap second uncle was even more so. She wondered what they would look like when they found that Chu Qing insisted on marrying Xiao Jie. She was really looking forward to it. The Empress Dowager increasingly felt that Xiao Wanru was a smart girl. She had thought that she had to spend more effort to teach Xiao Wanru slowly. Unexpectedly, Xiao Wanru could draw inferences about other cases from one instance. The smile on her face grew wider and she looked at Xiao Wanru and nodded repeatedly. Although Chen had lost the support of Marquis Xing's mansion and his family background was ordinary, he was chosen by Chen himself. Moreover, he was a smart girl, so she could make up for it a lot. It's best that you can think in this way. If you need anything in the future, you can come to me. Prince Chen will go to the border in a while. Prepare the things he needs and don't let him live an uncomfortable life outside. As for you, after Chen leaves, come to the palace to accompany me when you are free. Since the Empress Dowager was satisfied, she naturally had the intention to protect Xiao Wanru. Thank you, Imperial Grandmother. Xiao Wanru smiled like a flower. She stood up and bowed deeply to the Empress Dowager again with a little moved look on her face. She was really moved. The Empress Dowager made her feel a little like old Madame Qin. It felt good to be paid attention to and wanted to protect. Different from Chu Qing's pretentious look, the admiration in her eyes was more obvious and sincere. Although she did not shed tears and even wore a faint and decent smile, it made people feel that she really felt close to the Empress Dowager. This child also has a hard life. The Empress Dowager couldn't help thinking so. Chapter 932. The Empress Dowager had a better impression of Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru not only understood her warning, but also cooperated with her. The most important thing was that Xiao Wanru was sincere. The Empress Dowager had always been flattered. After being the Empress Dowager for so many years, from the previous dynasty to the present, the Empress Dowager had always been superior. Even if there was an empress in the imperial harem, so what? The supreme ruler of the imperial harem had always been the Empress Dowager, even if she didn't manage it. The S in the imperial harem would come again. If the Empress Dowager was willing to meet people, the palace of benevolent and peaceful would always be lively. The S in the imperial harem were beautiful, intelligent, quick-witted, eloquent, and some were charming and charming. They all had their own characteristics. For the Empress Dowager, they were all the same. They all wanted to please her and then the emperor. However, Xiao Wanru in front of her made her feel different. Although it was partly because of Chu Luchen, on the other hand, the Empress Dowager really felt that Xiao Wanru was close to her, which was the kind of closeness that a junior had to an elder. There was no interest in it. Your grandma is coming soon. Don't go back yet. Sit down and listen to it together. The Empress Dowager said with a smile. What is grandma doing here? Xiao Wanru was certainly very happy to see her and great elder princess, but she was still very surprised that her grandma came to the palace at this time. Judging from the Empress Dowager's words, she should have specially invited her grandma to the palace. Guess why? The Empress Dowager said in a good mood. Xiao Wanru's watery eyes curved, and then the corners of her mouth also curved. Is it because of Commandery Prince Qing? What happened before was the matter of Commandery Prince Qing. The Empress Dowager should have invited her and her grandma together at the same time. However, she came faster from the side door, while her grandma came from the main palace gate, which made a big circle. Why did you ask your grandma for help with Commandery Prince Qing? It has nothing to do with your grandma. The Empress Dowager didn't expect Xiao Wanru to be so smart. She became more interested and deliberately made things difficult for her. Imperial grandmother, did you ask my grandma to come here for old madam? Xiao Wanru asked tentatively with a smile in her watery eyes, with a bit of childishness. You are so clever. The Empress Dowager stretched out her finger, gently touched her forehead, and scolded with a smile. Xiao Wanru reached out to rub her forehead gently and said with a little grievance, Imperial grandmother, if I guessed correctly, you should not reward me but punish me. It's really unfair. Almost at the same time when the Empress Dowager spoke to her kindly, Xiao Wanru had already regarded her as old Madame Qin in her heart. Her intimate words were naturally revealed, just like the real granddaughter of an ordinary family, which made the Empress Dowager laugh involuntarily. This child was really a doting child. But she was really pitiful. She had no biological parents to take care of her, and her biological grandmother was like this. She didn't treat her as a descendant at all. Seeing that she was closer to her, she took the initiative to approach her. She was both clever and soft-hearted. She didn't know what old Madame of Marquis Xing's mansion was thinking. She didn't care about such a good granddaughter but doted on those shameless people. Not only did he not have good eyesight, but he was also a little too cold. Empress Dowager and great elder princess has arrived. A eunuch came in to report. Let her come in. The Empress Dowager raised her hand and said. After a while, the eunuch led Vr and great elder princess in. Seeing Xiao Wanru, great elder princess was also very surprised. She first bowed to the Empress Dowager and then sat down. Xiao Wanru hurriedly got up and bowed to Vr and great elder princess. Sit down together. Great elder princess reached out to take Xiao Wanru's hand and pulled her to sit aside. Xiao Wanru had only been married for a few days, so she didn't have time to see great elder princess. During these days, except for going back to visit her parents' home, she had to stay at home all the time. Xiao Wanru had originally planned to go to great elder princess mansion a few days later. Unexpectedly, she saw great elder princess in the palace of benevolent peace. She was surprised and delighted at the moment. Her hand was held by great elder princess, and her smile became more and more gentle, with a bit of a girl who saw an elder. Only in front of the elder who really loved her could she show this kind of coquettishness. She was originally coquettish, but in the past, she looked cold and indifferent, as if she was 1,000 miles away from others. This made her look very calm at a young age, without the willfulness and coquettishness unique to girls. At present, she had made up for this lost part. She looked like an ordinary girl, but she made people love her from the bottom of their hearts. These days, how are you and Prince Qin? There were some things that great elder princess couldn't say directly in the presence of the Empress Dowager, so she could only say implicitly. However, she said this sentence without asking too much. Chu Luqian had promised her that he would never wrong Zhuozhuo, let alone let Zhuozhuo be a widow at a young age. She looked at Xiao Wanru's face again. After hearing her question, Xiao Wanru's face showed that she was living well. His heart was relieved. "Grandma, we are fine." Xiao Wanru blushed and lowered her head. Being stared at by the two elders like this, Xiao Wanru felt that even she couldn't bear it. After all, she was not as cheeky as Chu Luqian. "It's good that you are fine. I heard that you went to Marquis Xing's mansion again today? Why did you go there? Now that you are married, you should live a good life with Prince Qin from now on. The affairs of Marquis Xing's mansion have nothing to do with you. They don't treat you as a relative, so you don't have to care about them. They didn't treat you well in the past, but now they want to ask you for help." Great Elder Princess sneered and said rudely. She really hated the people of Marquis Xing's mansion. Starting from Old Madam, she didn't like any of them. Of course, her grandson was different from her granddaughter. "Grandma, it's about Commandery Prince Qing," Xiao Wanru said implicitly. Since the Empress Dowager had called her grandma here, she must have something to say. She couldn't overtake the host. "Empress Dowager, why did you summon me here? Is it also because of Marquis Xing's mansion?" Then Great Elder Princess nodded and turned to the Empress Dowager. The eunuch who announced the Imperial edict had told her a few words and let her know that it was because of Commandery Prince Qing's visit to Marquis Xing's mansion, but she didn't know the details. "Great Elder Princess, Wanru is already Qin Er's legal wife. Tell them not to always look for Wanru for the trouble of Marquis Xing's mansion. It's not convenient for me to tell them about it. Great Elder Princess, it's just right for you." The Empress Dowager didn't intend to hide it from them and said bluntly. She really didn't want Xiao Wanru to be involved in the affairs of Marquis Xing Er's mansion so that Chu Luqian would be involved in it. The emperor disliked Xiao Jing, Marquis Xing's mansion more and more. He even got angry at her that day and scolded Xiao Jing for being a villain. If the next generation of Marquis Xing's mansion was hopeless, Marquis Xing's mansion would be ruined. The emperor disliked Marquis Xing's mansion very much now. First, it was Xiao Yanru's matter and then Xiao Hua An's marriage. Which of them could satisfy the emperor? Moreover, most of them were Xiao Jing's children. It was said that they all had the best reputation before. Of course, Xiao Jing's wife, who had an excellent reputation, was now proved to be a selfish and vicious woman who looked kind on the surface. Now there was no one in Marquis Xing's mansion who could satisfy the emperor. The next generation of Marquis Xing's mansion was led by Xiao Hua, but the emperor didn't like Xiao Hua, and because of what had happened on the day of his marriage. The Empress Dowager was afraid that once Marquis Xing's mansion lost power, she would involve Xiao Wanru, which was extremely disadvantageous to Chu Luqian. "Empress Dowager, do you want me to make trouble in Marquis Xing's mansion with this matter?" And Great Elder Princess understood the Empress Dowager's meaning as soon as she heard it. She sat up straight and asked. She was very happy to do this kind of thing. She had long disliked the old maid of Marquis Xing's mansion. It's better to tear apart what happened today and let others see that old madam forced Wanru. Wanru has married into Prince Chen's mansion and has little connection with Marquis Xing's mansion. She was not raised by Marquis Xing's mansion and has been repeatedly framed before. There is no affection between them. In the future, it's better for the two mansions to contact each other less, lest they get involved in Prince Chen's mansion again. The Empress Dowager nodded. She also thought of this matter just now and immediately thought of it. Xiao Wanru could have no help, but she couldn't let Marquis Xing's mansion tear her apart. As a junior, she couldn't say something. After all, she was a junior. How could she say such unfilial words? However, then Great Elder Princess could. She had been at odds with old madam of Marquis Xing's mansion. Even if she revealed this matter now, others wouldn't say anything about Great Elder Princess. Instead, they would have a better understanding of the selfish behavior of Marquis Xing's mansion. In the future, Marquis Xing's mansion wouldn't be able to use Prince Chen's mansion to talk. From time to time, she would use filial piety to make Xiao Wanru yield. Since Xiao Wanru was Chu Liuchen's woman and hadn't changed in 3 years, the Empress Dowager also knew that Xiao Wanru was Chu Liuchen's favorite, so she naturally had to protect her for him. She couldn't let Marquis Xing's mansion ruin her reputation. Now it was a good opportunity, and there would be more opportunities like this in the future. Of course, the Empress Dowager wouldn't let Xiao Wanru cut off her bloodline at once. However, after a few more such things, Marquis Xing's mansion couldn't command Xiao Wanru at will with righteousness. Don't worry, Empress Dowager. I understand. And Great Elder Princess's eyes lit up with excitement. This time was different from the past. This time, she had the support of the Empress Dowager. Even if there would be censors in the future, she wouldn't be afraid. Empress Dowager, I'll go now in case of trouble. When Great Elder Princess stood up, she felt that this matter couldn't be delayed. Are you so anxious? The Empress Dowager couldn't help laughing. I'm very anxious. I've been waiting for this day for more than 10 years. Speaking of this, and Great Elder Princess thought of her daughter and son-in-law who died early, and her eyes couldn't help turning red. If she could, she really wanted to go up and beat this vicious old woman to vent the anger in her heart for so many years. Chapter 933. Great Elder Princess aggressively went to Marquis Xing's mansion with a large group of servant girls and old maids. The carriage moved slowly in front, followed by 2 neat rows of servants. They were all old maids and servant girls who did rough work. At first glance, one could tell that they were sturdier and fiercer than ordinary servant girls. Moreover, the direction of the carriage was Marquis Xing's mansion. Needless to say, it must be against Marquis Xing's mansion again. Although they had heard that old Madam of Marquis Xing's mansion and Great Elder Princess didn't get along well with each other, most of them just heard about it. But in recent years, they had seen the relationship between the 2 mansions several times. Were they going to fight again? What was it about this time? Hadn't 5th Miss Xiao married Prince Chen? Could it be that something happened again? Many onlookers were inexplicably excited and involuntarily followed and Great Elder Princess's carriage to Marquis Xing's mansion to watch the fun. The carriage of and Great Elder Princess didn't go fast, so the idlers followed her. When they arrived at Marquis Xing's mansion, Great Elder Princess's motorcade had been followed by many people. Marquis Xing's mansion had already heard the news. Old Madam was so angry that she almost fainted. She didn't know what and Great Elder Princess was going to do. Grandma, what should we do? Yu Shiran was also a little flustered. She had heard that Ruan Great Elder Princess was not kind to old Madam of Marquis Xing's mansion, but she had never seen such a scene. Let's go and pick her up at the gate. Old Madam was also very flustered. She had never won against and Great Elder Princess. Now she could only show weakness and let and Great Elder Princess see their sincerity. Grandma, let me help you. Zhao Shiran actually wanted to leave, but it was obvious that there was no one else in the Lord Protector's manor to accompany Madame Dowager, so he could only bite the bullet and accompany Madame Dowager. They hurried to the gate with some servant girls and old maids. They wanted to wait at the gate before and Great Elder Princess arrived to show their sincerity. Grandma, why did and Great Elder Princess come here? I heard that the Great Elder Princess cares about 5th younger sister the most. Zhao Shiran carefully inquired as he walked. She had thought that she didn't need to care too much about these things. Since Xiao Wanru was married, how much hatred could Great Elder Princess have against Marquis Xing's mansion? But now she had to ask a few more questions. Zhao Shiran also regretted it. If she had known that Great Elder Princess would make trouble for Marquis Xing's mansion, she should have been more cautious at that time. She could not let Xiao Caihuan catch her weakness, so that old Madam now had a seed of doubt in her heart. Although old Madam seemed to think highly of her now, it was actually because there was no one in the backyard of Marquis Xing's mansion. Except for her, no one could help old Madam. Is it because of what happened to Commandery Prince Qing? Old Madam was also wondering how she had offended Great Elder Princess and made Great Elder Princess come here. We invited fifth younger sister here to discuss the matter of Commandery Prince Qing. It's not a big deal. Why is Great Elder Princess so angry? Zhao Shiran couldn't figure it out. She really couldn't figure it out. She had never heard that Great Elder Princess was narrow-minded before. She only heard that Great Elder Princess was very arrogant and not very affectionate to others, but she didn't look for trouble in this way. It must be because of fifth younger sister again. She treats fifth younger sister as if she is a pearl. She is just a troublesome girl. She doesn't even think about which branch the title of nobility belongs to now. Old Madam cursed in a low voice with hatred. She even cursed Xiao Wanru. She felt that she was innocent, but she didn't think that Xiao Wanru, who was dragged in by her for no reason, was really innocent. Zhao Shiran's eyes darkened, but then she comforted Old Madam with a smile and said, "Grandma, don't worry. If Great Elder Princess has something to say later, we will ask her to have a good talk. Fifth younger sister is married, but it doesn't matter if she goes back to her parents' home." While they were talking, they had arrived at the gate. Looking outside, they found that Great Elder Princess's carriage had also arrived. Seeing the people behind the secret code, all the people of Marquis Xing's mansion were a little flustered. Wasn't this a little too big of a scene? Could it be that everyone who saw them along the way had followed them here? The carriage stopped. Seeing Old Madam and Zhao Shiran at the gate, someone had already reported them to Great Elder Princess. Great Elder Princess got out of the carriage with the help of a servant girl. A servant girl came over and gently straightened her dress, and then walked to the gate. Zhao Shiran gently pushed Old Madam and helped her come out to greet them. After they met, Zhao Shiran put down his hand and bowed deeply to Great Elder Princess respectfully. "Greetings, Great Elder Princess." "Don't." Great Elder Princess said coldly. Old Madam was a little embarrassed, but she still suppressed the anger in her heart and also bowed to Great Elder Princess. In the past, when she was Madam of Duke Xing, although she couldn't compare with Great Elder Princess, she was at least a first-class Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion. But now, her status was lower, so she could no longer pretend to forget her in front of Great Elder Princess. What's more, Great Elder Princess came with bad intentions. Old Madam was very aggrieved, but she had to show weakness. The current Marquis Xing's mansion was no longer the former Duke Xing's mansion. "Old Madam, you're too polite. I heard that today, because Commandery Prince Qing is going to marry the second miss or the third miss of your mansion," Old Madame called Zhuozhua, who has always been taking care of Prince Qin, and forced her to enter the palace to talk to the Empress Dowager about it. "According to your idea, let the third miss marry the second miss?" Great Elder Princess was very calm, but she still raised her chin high, glanced at Old Madam coldly, and asked. Old Madam's face turned red. Her fingers trembled a few times, and she almost clutched the handkerchief spasmodically. "Great Elder Princess, you're wrong. How could there be such a thing? I just asked the fifth miss to come to our mansion to talk about it. How could Old Madam dare to admit this kind of thing? Not to mention that this kind of thing was involved in other things, she would inevitably get a reputation for being unkind. The fifth miss was no longer the fifth miss of the past, and it was related to Prince Qin. For this reason, Old Madam didn't dare to say anything in her temper. Am I wrong? I heard this from the Empress Dowager. Would the Empress Dowager lie to me?" Great Elder Princess didn't believe it and still said coldly. Old Madam's face turned livid. What the Empress Dowager said must be true, or it must be true even if it was not true. How could the Empress Dowager say such a thing? Old Madam stammered. Since Commandery Prince Qing asked the Empress Dowager for help, the Empress Dowager naturally has to make a decision. Old Madam, do you mean that the Empress Dowager shouldn't tell me, but let you continue to embarrass Zhuozhua for no reason? Although Great Elder Princess didn't make a move, the anger in her eyes was obvious. Do you want sisters in your mansion? These things have nothing to do with Zhuozhua. She is just a married girl, and she is the youngest sister. Why should she care about this kind of annoying things in your mansion? This thing. Old Madam didn't expect that Great Elder Princess didn't come up to make a move directly, but seemed to reason with her. However, she took the initiative and said that it was the Empress Dowager's idea. How dare she say that there was no such thing? However, this kind of thing could be said in private. In front of so many people, it was the fault of Marquis Xing's mansion. In the past, old madam might be able to deal with Wu, and great elder princess, who had made a move as soon as she came up. But now, and great elder princess, who was particularly reasonable and knew how to oppress people with her power, was a little strange to old madam. She couldn't help but turn to look at Zhao Shiran. This granddaughter-in-law was very smart. Great elder princess, in fact, this is not what I mean. Commandery Prince Qing has already understood our mansion's intention, and he also understands our mansion. If Great Elder Princess feels unhappy, we cannot trouble Fifth Sister with the affairs of our mansion in the future. I hope Great Elder Princess won't make a move and hurt our harmony. Zhao Shiran braced herself to explain with a smile. In fact, she didn't want to deal with and Great Elder Princess at all, but now she couldn't pretend that she didn't understand old madam's meaning. Great Elder Princess glanced at her and then fell on old madam again. She ignored Zhao Shiran and said, "Old madam, is your second miss going to find another person of higher status? Since she doesn't like Commandery Prince Qing, why did she ask Commandery Prince Qing to come to discuss the marriage? She asked Prince Chen to tell Commandery Prince Qing through Zhuozhua. The second miss of Marquis Xing's mansion wanted to find another person of higher status, so she didn't want to marry into Commandery Prince Qing's mansion? This news was sensational and immediately attracted all kinds of speculations from the onlookers. Many people knew about the affairs between second Miss Xiao and Commandery Prince Qing in the past. Although it happened in the palace at that time, there were many scheming people and many people were willing to spread this news. When people heard it, they also thought it was very romantic, so more people knew about it. Both of them had been like this, but second Miss Xiao still wanted to find another person of higher status? The onlookers who didn't understand Ru and Great Elder Princess's words before now understood. Therefore, the younger sister married on behalf of the older sister, not because the younger sister was willing to marry, but because the older sister didn't want to marry, so the younger sister was forced to marry on behalf of the older sister. Was the second Miss Xiao still a daughter of a concubine? Except for the second Miss Xiao, all the others in Marquis Xing's mansion seemed to be daughters of the legal wife. Forcing the daughter of the legal wife to marry the daughter of a concubine? Is Marquis Xing's mansion crazy? How could such a thing happen? Did the daughter of a concubine take a fancy to who is inside? Someone reached out and pointed in the direction of the palace. No matter how bad Commandery Prince Qing was, he was still a member of the royal family and was handsome. How could the second Miss Xiao not like him? But on the other hand, if even Commandery Prince Qing didn't like him, then it must be the emperor himself or the emperor's young princes. From this point of view, it seemed that the second daughter of a concubine had found another person of higher status. For the sake of a daughter of a concubine, a daughter of the legal wife who married Prince Chen was forced to meddle in the affairs of her maiden family again and again, and another daughter of the legal wife was forced to marry on behalf of the younger sister of a concubine. How shameless the daughter of a concubine was. Someone said in surprise. It was really worthwhile for a daughter of a concubine to be in such a position. In the future, if someone tells me that a daughter of a concubine has a hard life, I will slap her in the mouth. Let's see what kind of good life second Miss Xiao has led. She can marry whoever she wants to marry. If she doesn't want to marry, her legal sister and legal sister will marry on her behalf. Chapter 934. Old Madam was so angry that her face turned red, then green, and then white. With such a title, it was impossible for Xiao Jie to enter any prince's mansion above board. In other words, Xiao Jie could only enter Commandery Prince Qing's mansion now. Moreover, even if Commandery Prince Qing didn't give her the title of concubine, it didn't matter. Such a lowly woman could only be a concubine for the sake of Marquis Xing's mansion. Xiao Jie was of great use. If not for this reason, how could old madam care about such a little daughter of a concubine? Great elder princess, How can you confuse right and wrong like this? Old Madam knew that she could not be soft at the moment. If she was soft, the whole Marquis Xing's mansion would lose. Old Madam, I'm not here to argue with you whether it's right or wrong. It's just a matter of your mansion. No matter what you do, it has nothing to do with me. I'm just worried about Princess Chen. Since you've made things like this, you should find a way to solve it. Don't drag Princess Chen down. In the past, you didn't love Princess Chen at all. You doted on Xiao Baolin the most after he entered the palace. At this time, don't always use Princess Chen as a shield. Princess Chen is now a member of the royal family and Prince Chen's wife. She is no longer the fifth Miss Xiao who you can call and leave at your command, nor the most lonely fifth miss in the eldest branch who has no one to love in the mansion. The great elder princess said coldly. Although her attitude was still calm, everyone could see that she was suppressing her anger. Everyone nodded. Many things had happened in Marquis Xing's mansion recently. It was true that no one doted on fifth Miss Xiao. She had been struggling in Marquis Xing's mansion and had been forced to go up the mountain to cultivate in seclusion for 3 years to observe mourning for her parents. No elder in a mansion who doted on their children would do such a thing. Besides, this fifth Miss Xiao was not brought up by Marquis Xing's mansion. It could be said that the people of Marquis Xing's mansion did not raise her. From this point of view, Marquis Xing's mansion was even less powerful than Ningyuan Army General's mansion to ask the current Princess Chen to do anything. Princess Chen is so pitiful. Indeed pitiful. We still don't know how Princess Chen's parents died. The benefits have all fallen into the hands of the second branch. Even a concubine daughter of the second branch is more noble than Prince Chen. This is too much. From time to time, people would speak up for the injustice. Everyone was full of sympathy for Princess Chen and felt that she was very pitiful. In fact, for Marquis Xing's mansion, since they had never raised her, how could they ask Princess Chen to be respectful to them now? Great Elder Princess. Old Madam wanted to say something but was interrupted by Great Elder Princess. Old Madam, that's all I have to say. Please don't ask Princess Chen about the dirty things in your mansion in the future, and don't force Princess Chen to respect your filial piety. You force her to be embarrassed. She is Princess Chen, and more importantly, she is a member of the royal family. Don't use the means you used on the backyard on her again. Old Madam said. Great Elder Princess said. Then she turned around and left decisively. She didn't let these aggressive servant girls and old maids smash her. But this made Old Madam more flustered than smashing. If Great Elder Princess really smashed her, others would only care about Great Elder Princess's arrogance instead of focusing on Marquis Xing's mansion. Great Elder Princess. Old Madam was stunned for a moment and quickly said, I have always cared about 5th Mississippi. She is my own flesh and blood, and she is the only daughter of my eldest brother. How can I not care about her? Speaking of this, Old Madam's eyes turned red and she kept wiping her tears with a handkerchief. Great Elder Princess, Grandma really loves 5th sister. She doesn't bother 5th sister with everything. She just wants 5th sister to know what has happened in the family. Zhao Xiran hurriedly continued Old Madam's words. They cooperated well with each other, which made some people confused. Could it be that the two families misunderstood? Great Elder Princess stopped, turned to look at Zhao Xiran, and slightly raised the corners of her mouth. Zhuozhuo had told her that the newly married sister-in-law was a smart person. Now it seemed that she was really smart. She knew what to say at this time, and to a great extent, she could save everyone's imagination. But today she came here to tear off the face, and the so-called face was actually not important. Old Madam, do you mean that it is false to let 3rd Miss marry on behalf of 2nd Miss? Great Elder Princess turned in front of the carriage and said coldly. Even the Empress Dowager knew it, so Old Madam didn't dare to say it was false. But she was unwilling to admit it, so she could only pretend that she didn't know how to explain for a while. Since it's not true, does Old Madam mean that this kind of dirty thing should be blamed on Princess Chen? Great Elder Princess said again. She didn't answer the last question, and it was not easy to answer this question directly. Old Madam felt that Great Elder Princess in front of her was much more cunning than before, and was not as rude and aggressive as before. In the past, old Madam hated Great Elder Princess's rude and unreasonable manner of directly taking action without saying anything, but now she would rather Great Elder Princess be like this. Old Madam, God is watching what you do. You have done so many guilty things. Who will God forgive? Great Elder Princess said with cold eyes. Then she ignored old Madam, whose lips were trembling and unable to speak, and got off the carriage with the help of Nanny Gao. Zhao Shiran still wanted to say something, but he met Great Elder Princess sitting in the carriage. He immediately lowered his eyes in panic to hide the nervousness in his eyes. Great Elder Princess's carriage left, just like that? Looking at the empty gate and then at the idlers who were gossiping, old Madam swayed and almost fainted. Zhao Shiran hurriedly reached out to hold her and whispered, "Grandma! Help me to your father's yard," old Madam said in a low voice. She felt floating, as if she was stepping on cotton and couldn't touch the ground for a while. If it weren't for Zhao Shiran's support, she would have fainted at this time. And Great Elder Princess had gone too far. Although she didn't fight at the door today, her intention was more insulting than fighting at the door. Moreover, she tore apart the veil of tenderness between Xiao Wanru and Marquis Xing's mansion. In the future, even if old Madam wanted to bully Xiao Wanru in the name of filial piety, many people would probably suspect that she had bad intentions. Xiao Jing was in the mansion, but it was not convenient for him to show up because of Great Elder Princess's matter. Originally, he thought that Great Elder Princess would make trouble at most once as before. Because she had made trouble many times, Xiao Jing, together with several Imperial censors who had a good relationship with her, would report to the Emperor after Great Elder Princess made trouble. The Imperial censors also knew that Great Elder Princess was unkind to Marquis Xing's mansion and that she had made trouble at the door of Marquis Xing's mansion. This time, Xiao Jing felt that it was time. Marquis Xing's mansion had suffered losses several times in the past. This time, Great Elder Princess was bound to suffer. So he strayed in the study of his yard and waited for the news quietly. Unexpectedly, instead of the news that Great Elder Princess had a big fight in Marquis Xing's mansion, Great Elder Princess had exposed Xiao Jing's perfect plan in front of many people. He had promised to send Xiao Jie to Prince Cheng's mansion, but how could he do that now? Xiao Jing clearly knew that it was impossible for Prince Cheng to allow Xiao Jie to enter Prince Chen's mansion since the matter had become so serious. Mother, did Great Elder Princess really say so? Xiao Jing paced around the room several times, but he couldn't calm down. He managed to stand still and asked again. Yes, Great Elder Princess said so. Second brother, does Great Elder Princess know something? Old Madam also calmed down at this time. She lowered her voice nervously and said, there were only the two of them in the study. Zhao Shiran was sent outside, and even Nanny Yu, who served Old Madam, went to the door to guard for them. Impossible. Xiao Jing shook his head decisively. It was impossible for Great Elder Princess to know anything. Is it the Empress Dowager's order? Old Madam shivered. She was also very afraid of this answer. It should be the Empress Dowager's order to warn us not to get Princess Qin involved. Xiao Jing said with a gloomy face. What do you mean not to get her involved? She just asked her to come here to make a decision and plead for mercy in front of the Empress Dowager. How could she want to get her involved? If she was not the miss of Marquis Xing's mansion, could she marry Prince Qin? What an ungrateful girl. She even reported it to the Empress Dowager. Old Madam couldn't help scolding. Xiao Jing stretched out his hand and stopped Old Madam's scolding. He frowned fiercely. Second brother, what should we do now? What do you think about second Mrs. Matter? Old Madam helplessly changed the topic and asked. This was the most urgent thing at the moment. It's up to the Empress Dowager's order. There should be news soon, but don't count on it too much. Xiao Jing said helplessly. How can we do that? Old Madam stood up and said anxiously. You have to do that. Can you disobey the Empress Dowager's order? Xiao Jing said angrily. Of course, Old Madam did not dare to do that. She sat down heavily. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She couldn't help scolding again. What a troublemaker. If I had known this, I would not have let her come back. What's the use of her coming back? Not only can she not help the mansion, but she always makes great elder princess come to find her. It's meaningless to talk about this now. You go to tell Jie later and ask her to concentrate on preparing to enter Commandery Prince Qing's mansion. Don't think about other things. Xiao Jing waved his hand impatiently and said, Mother, go back first. Let me think about it again. The most terrible thing was that Prince Qing was involved in this matter. If they offended Prince Qing, their share would be much higher than that of Commandery Prince Qing. It seemed that she could not give up on Ru Yu. She had to find a way to talk to Ru secretly. She did not want to do what Ru had told her before, but now she had to do it. This was at least a way out. Compared to the eldest daughter, the second daughter was useless. If she was useless, then so be it. She wasn't a good person anyway. Come on, prepare the carriage. Old Madam is not feeling well. I will ask for a string of Buddha beads to be placed in front of the Buddha. After thinking it through, Xiao Jing raised his voice and ordered. Chapter 935. In 1 second, he remembered 800 mail sign little divided by TalkNet. There was no pop-up window for free reading. The mountain road was rugged, and Wenxin Road was winding upward. When Shichi walked peacefully, just like the feeling he gave people in the past. Even though he was now serving in the Ministry of Justice, the former top scholar still gave people a feeling of gentleness. The good cultivation of a son of an aristocratic family made him look graceful and elegant. The young ladies walking on Wenxin Road secretly looked at him with blushing faces when they were standing to rest from time to time. Even if they didn't know who he was, they were fascinated by his charm. When Shichi looked calm, but only his face was calm. After standing still for a while, he looked up at the steps leading up and turned a blind eye to the shy and timid gazes of the girls around him. Then he slowly and firmly walked up the steps. It was not the first time that he had walked Wenxin Road. In fact, every time he came to Huaguang Temple, he would take such a road. Wenxin? This time, he did come to Wenxin to ask the abbot of Huaguang Temple about his heart. He went up step by step. This time, he didn't stop, as if he didn't know tiredness. His steps were as steady as when he first went up the mountain, and then he steadily stepped on the last step. Third young master, the abbot is waiting for you. A little monk stood on it and bowed to Wenshichi with a smile. He had been waiting here for a long time. Is the abbot free at this time? Wenshichi nodded and asked as he walked inside. The abbot said that he's free when third young master is here. Although the monk was young, he was already very zen. He put his palms together and answered with a smile, following behind Wenshichi. The abbot of Huaguang Temple was highly respected. He couldn't be seen easily, nor could he be asked to see by power alone. However, Wenshichi was different. He and the abbot of Huaguang Temple were friends despite the difference in age. Of course, the monks of Huaguang Temple would look up to him. This was related to his talent and learning, but had nothing to do with his family background. The abbot of Huaguang Temple met Wenshichi in a remote meditation room. There was a chessboard between them. After greeting each other, Wenshichi sat down. The abbot smiled slightly and put down a chess piece in his hand. This is the unfinished situation from last time, but it's a reverse situation. The abbot of Huaguang Temple looked to be in his 60s or 70s. He was very kind. The corners of his eyes were raised, and there seemed to be a kind of emptiness in his eyes that could see through everything. Between his long eyebrows, there was a kind of leisurely spirit that was different from the secular world. This kind of attitude was somewhat similar to Wenshichi's, but after thinking about it carefully, it was not very similar. Both of them were different, but Wenshichi was still in the mortal world after all, so he was somewhat different from the abbot of Huaguang Temple. As a child from a wealthy family, he was elegant with an aura of fire and smoke, unlike the abbot of Huaguang Temple who was completely detached from worldly affairs. When he looked at you, it seemed that he was not looking at you, and it was hard to tell whether he was looking at you or through you. Anyone who was next to the abbot of Huaguang Temple would have a feeling of being seen through. Wenshichi, on the other hand, placed a chess piece very freely. He didn't ask why the game was played in this way. This was an endgame between him and the abbot, but now their positions were reversed. Originally, he should be sitting in the abbot's position now. Last time, he had sat in this way. Now the two of them had changed positions, and he was playing the chess piece that the abbot had played at that time. Seeing that when Shichi did not speak, the abbot of Huaguang Temple added with a smile, "There is a reverse situation in the game, and so is a person." When Shichi's hand trembled, and a chess piece that had been clamped between his fingers fell to the ground. It happened to fall into an empty space. He subconsciously reached out to pick it up, which was not the place he had taken a fancy to. However, his hand was stopped by the abbot of Huaguang Temple with a smile. "Third benefactor 1, the chess piece has fallen. You can't pick it up again." "Master, this is originally a misunderstanding. I accidentally dropped it," Wen Shichi explained helplessly. He was shocked by the abbot's words just now and lost his calm. There is no regret in placing a chess piece. Benefactor 1 can't regret even if you want to now. The abbot smiled and placed the chess piece in his hand, which happened to stop the good situation that when Shichi was forming just now. He stopped it without any hesitation. "Master, now you have also learned to quibble." When Shichi looked at the shameless old monk and rubbed his forehead with a headache. The old monk, who looked like an immortal in others' eyes, was actually very shameless in playing chess. Of course, others didn't know this, and only when Shichi would encounter it from time to time. There is no regret in raising one's hand. This is the case in the game of chess, and so is life. The abbot smiled kindly, but the meaning in his words made when Shichi put down the chess piece in his hand. He did come up the mountain for something today. "Master, is it possible to have a second life?" He had thought about this sentence repeatedly these days. Many strange ideas came to his mind in dreams and reality, which made it difficult for him to distinguish whether what he said about Xiao Wanru was true or not again. Benefactor Wen's heart is in a mess. The abbot placed another chess piece and caught up with Wen Shichi's previous one. In the past, Wen Shichi's chess skills were better than the abbot's, but now the abbot saw the hope of winning, so he smiled more and more gently. When Shichi didn't place his chess piece this time, he frowned in distress and looked at the abbot of Huaguang Temple. "Master, I have a dream in which I am always entangled with a woman who is not familiar with me. It seems that there was some fate between her and me. But now I am still not familiar with her." When Shichi said, these words were the summary of what he had been unable to figure out recently. They seemed to be very familiar with each other and should have been very close to each other, but in fact, they were not familiar with each other. It could even be said that they had nothing to do with each other. However, when he saw Chu Luchen marry Xiao Wanru, he felt inexplicably uncomfortable. It was a kind of annoyance and discomfort, as if the thing he cared about most had been stolen. He couldn't explain it clearly, but it was indeed this kind of feeling. After watching Xiao Wanru marry into Prince Chen's mansion, when Shichi had been in this state, which almost made him unable to sleep at night. During the day, whenever he was free, he would think of this matter. Did he miss something or forget something? He had asked all the people around him, but no one knew this fifth Miss Xiao. Although they were close neighbors, the inner courtyard of women was different from the outer courtyard. What was more, Xiao Wanru was admitted into Marquis Xing's mansion later and was not familiar with Prime Minister Wen's mansion, so she would not go to Prime Minister Wen's mansion for no reason. There was a predestined relationship in the previous life, and there is a predestined relationship in this life. The past is over and it's hard to recover. The abbot of Huaguang Temple said with a smile. The meaning in his words made Wen Shichi frown more tightly. Then, he put down the chess piece in his hand casually and reached out to grab another chess piece from the abbot of Huaguang Temple. He snatched the other chess piece from his hand and casually placed it in the same spot. "Benefactor Wen, this chess piece belongs to me. You put it in the wrong place." The abbot of Huaguang Temple said with a smile. He picked up the chess piece that Wen Shichi had just put down from the encirclement and then put it in another place. "In this way I can survive. If I had been in your position just now, neither I nor Benefactor Wen would have survived." Hearing the abbot of Huaguang Temple say this, Wen Shichi also focused his attention on the chessboard. Only then did he find that the chess piece he had casually snatched from the abbot of Huaguang Temple turned out to be a famous endgame. The two of them had played this endgame before, and it was a stalemate. It couldn't be solved, and it was messy. The result of the stalemate was neither victory nor defeat. He bent the corners of his mouth with a wry smile and said with flagging interest, "The stalemate is not bad. It's neither victory nor defeat. Maybe it can come to a good stop." Sometimes a stalemate can be said to be a standstill, or it may be a lose-lose situation. If a third party comes, the stalemate will be a dead end. The abbot of Huaguang Temple said unhurriedly. When Shichi's face changed slightly, and he looked at the abbot of Huaguang Temple. A stalemate? A lose-lose situation? A chess game is like life. Everyone is different. It's not a game of chess to win the world, but it can be compared to life. If a stalemate results in a lose-lose situation, you can take the chess piece away and find a way out. Since you are not suitable for this position, you can give up this position and let someone more suitable take it. The abbot's words were more zen, and his smile was more leisurely. When Shichi's breathing suddenly quickened, he looked up at the abbot of Huaguang Temple excitedly, reached out his hand, and suddenly wiped the chessboard with his hand. He also stood up. "Since there is a mistake in the chess game, let's start again." Can we start again? Speaking of this, when Shichi's eyes were burning with enthusiasm, and the strange idea made him involuntarily breathe excitedly. There is a saying in a chess game that if we can start again, it may not be the previous one. The chess game has been changed. Even if it is no longer a stalemate, the person is no longer an old friend. The abbot of Huaguang Temple seemed not to see the expectation in Wen Shichi's eyes, and slowly picked up the disordered chess pieces. Wen Shichi's face suddenly turned pale, and his face, which had been rolling violently just now, suddenly became empty. He pressed his hand on the chessboard, and his eyes seemed to freeze. Let's change the chess game? Since it doesn't work, let's change the chess game, and the person can also be changed. The smile on the abbot's face faded a little, and his eyes became gentler. Since we have started again, the past can't be chased. What if we force it? Wen Shichi said in a hoarse voice, unwilling to give up. It's against heaven's will. The abbot said slowly. Isn't it against heaven's will if we start again? Wen Shichi asked hurriedly, and his fingers tightly grasped the chessboard, as if he was grasping the most important thing. Even though the chess game was in chaos, he was unwilling to let go. Of course it's against heaven's will to start again, so we have to pay a great price. The abbot looked at the chessboard in front of him, and his eyes darkened. His fingers trembled slightly, and then he shook his head. He pinched his fingers under his sleeves and shook his head repeatedly. It's impossible. It's impossible. If it's possible, what are the conditions? Wen Shichi took a deep breath, and his eyes fell on the abbot of Huaguang Temple again. He tried hard to suppress the excitement in his heart and asked slowly. Chapter 936. It's like going against heaven. Heaven can't be defied. The abbot shook his head repeatedly, and his expression was no longer calm. What if it's impossible? Wen Shichi persistently wanted to get an answer from the abbot of Huaguang Temple. Blood will flow like a river. The fate of the dynasty, the destiny of heaven. The abbot of Huaguang Temple looked pale. He suddenly reached out and pressed on the air. He looked up at Wen Shichi and said, "Benefactor Wen, you don't have to say more. It's impossible." "There's a slight possibility, right?" Wen Shichi asked eagerly. "Impossible, impossible." The abbot of Huaguang Temple said repeatedly as if he didn't hear his words. The room became strangely quiet. Wen Shichi slowly sat down and said in a low voice, "No one can meet the conditions?" The abbot of Huaguang Temple slowly calmed down and shook his head again. "No one knows what it is exactly, at least not in the Central Plains." His words were vague and he seemed to hide something. Wen Shichi and the abbot of Huaguang Temple had known each other for a long time. When he saw the abbot's words, he knew that he couldn't get any more information from him. "Abbot, can you tell how long I have to live?" His expression eased. he said casually as he tidied up the chessboard, as if he wasn't the one who had been anxious just now. The abbot of Huaguang Temple's face became serious. A few years ago, he had told Wenxiqi's fortune and found that he had a destiny of life and death. Therefore, he felt more pity for him and felt that it was a pity that a person like him, who was talented but had a lot of disasters in his fate. However, Wenxiqi was very open-minded and did what he should do. He was very open-minded and even didn't ask about it again after that. This was also the reason why the abbot of Huaguang Temple and Wenxiqi were friends. Write a word. The abbot of Huaguang Temple pointed to the table by the window and said. He really wanted to tell Wenxiqi's fortune, but Wenxiqi didn't care much about it and didn't take the initiative to mention it. The abbot couldn't force him. Some things couldn't be forced, even this kind of thing. It was the best to go with the will. Especially for people like the abbot of Huaguang Temple, he agreed with this kind of behavior that went with the will of the will. Wenxiqi took the initiative to ask this time, which was in line with the current situation. There were writing brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone on the table by the window, which was the place where he used to practice calligraphy. Wenxiqi put down the chess piece in his hand and walked to the window. After thinking for a while, he inexplicably thought of a little face that was both angry and smiling. He involuntarily moved his hand and wrote the word Ru. After Xiao Wanru finished writing the character Ru, she threw her hand away and frowned tightly. She was very dissatisfied with the character she had written. She was supposed to test her character, but why did she think of Xiao Wanru? Moreover, Xiao Wanru was now Princess Chen. If others knew that it was Xiao Wanru's character, Ru, it would be extremely bad for Xiao Wanru. The abbot of Huaguang Temple also came over. When he saw the word Ru written by Wenxiqi and then looked at Wenxiqi's current state, a smile suddenly appeared on his face. He put his palms together and said, "This is good." "What do you mean by good?" Wenxiqi raised his eyebrows. "Benefactor when's life is saved," the abbot of Huaguang Temple said with a smile. This was very unexpected, but it was not the most unexpected thing. When he was calculating at that time, he had found a glimmer of hope, but it was very faint and almost non-existent. Now, looking at it again, it had suddenly become clear, and it was no longer the condensed fate at that time. Sure enough, moving a chess piece is like changing a chess piece. There is a woman in the character Ru, and the benefactor in benefactor when's life should be a woman. There are two mouths in the character Ru. Their mouths are connected but not their hearts. Although this woman is destined to meet benefactor Wen, and benefactor Wen is also saved because of this fate, their hearts can't be connected. They are destined but not destined. The abbot of Huaguang Temple said, "Master, how can you be so sure?" Wenxiqi was not convinced. Donor Wen's worried look just now is the same. Donor Wen came up the mountain today and was very upset, but it is true that the only chance of survival in life has appeared. Since it is not a matter of fate, it is a matter of love. But this matter of love is not so easy to answer. The abbot of Huaguang Temple said meaningfully, "I missed it by accident?" Wenxiqi was not reconciled after all. If you missed it, you missed it. It doesn't matter whether it was accidental or intentional. Since you missed it, you are not destined. The abbot of Huaguang Temple said. A monk hurried in and said, "Abbot, Prince Cheng invites you." "Prince Cheng is here?" The abbot of Huaguang Temple was stunned for a moment. In the past, he rarely saw one or two of these people, but recently they seemed to come more. Prince Cheng liked Buddhism and wanted to be a monk, so he couldn't get married. Now he was so old, but he had been putting it off. But in fact, this matter had nothing to do with Huaguang Temple. Prince Cheng liked a quieter place, so he lived in Yuyun Temple. Although he occasionally came to Huaguang Temple, he seldom came. But recently, Prince Cheng came to Huaguang Temple more often. Especially every time he came, he always looked for the abbot. Of course, if the abbot really had something to do, he said he would not care about it. However, it was not good to always not see him when he came so often. "Abbot, go ahead. I'll stay for a while before leaving." Wenxiqi said with a smile, "Since Prince Cheng came to see you, he must have something to tell you." The abbot nodded. He had refused Prince Ching several times in the past few days, so it was really inconvenient for him to refuse him at this time. Although Prince Ching had no power, he was a member of the royal family and the younger brother of the current emperor. He put his palms together with a smile, bowed to Wen Shiqi and left. Wen Shiqi still sat down in front of the chessboard, staring at the messy chessboard in front of him with a frown. What the abbot of Huaguang Temple said just now fell on his heart. There was only one name in his heart now, Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru was his destined person. He was sure that it was Xiao Wanru who saved him. Without Xiao Wanru's hint, she would not investigate her second brother, nor would she suspect her cousin. The tribulation in her life should be the two of them. If this was the case, her cousin and her second brother were really vicious. After going back, it seemed that she had to investigate them carefully. But what about being predestined but not destined? A trace of coldness flashed across his eyes. Since they were predestined, and it was not in this life, why could he only be a bystander? It was she who broke his deadlock, so the two of them should be predestined. The scene in his dream seemed to be extremely clear at this moment. When he recalled Xiao Wanru's happy expression when she first saw him, he felt a faint sense of familiarity. At that time, he felt surprised, but now he thought it had a deeper meaning. She seemed to know him at that time. Was there an indescribable sense of affinity for him? But later, she seemed to become more and more unfamiliar and distant. Was this the so-called predestined but not destined? Wen Shiqi believed in the beginning. Xiao Wanru had always been kind to him. When did she become more and more indifferent to him? His hand, which was pressing the chessboard, trembled slightly, and the thought in his heart became more and more serious. If his guess was true, then did Xiao Wanru know about her previous life? Wen Shiqi didn't care about the Buddhist theory of karma in the past, but he had always read according to his heart and didn't work hard. Sometimes, he would deliberately find some leisure books to read, and he had heard some strange stories. It was said that after someone died, he came back to life, but said that he wasn't himself, but someone else in another place. He clearly described the people and things that he once knew, and this person had never left this place before. There were many such rumors in some miscellaneous books. Wen Shiqi used to read them as a leisure book, but now he was shocked when he thought about it. If these were true, did it mean that Xiao Wanru and he had a previous life, and in his previous life, they had been a couple? If he deduced according to this way, did Xiao Wanru remember her previous life? But Wen Shiqi suddenly stood up with a pale face and cold sweat on his forehead. He took 2 steps back and almost fell down. This conclusion shocked him too much. He couldn't believe it was true, but he felt that it was the closest to the truth. Benefactor Wen, what's the matter? Hearing the voice inside, a little monk came in and put his palms together respectfully. I'm fine. Will the master come back? Wen Shiqi's face was as pale as snow, and he tried to suppress the shocking thought in his heart. The abbot hasn't come back yet. I heard that Prince Ching is going to preach scriptures with the abbot today, so I'm afraid it will take a long time for him to come back. Every time Prince Ching preaches scriptures, it will take a long time. Although the fair-skinned little monk looked young, he looked quite dignified and said to Wen Shiqi in an orderly manner, "Okay, then I'll go down the mountain first. When the abbot comes back, say goodbye to him for me." Wen Shiqi said, "Don't worry, Benefactor Wen. I will." The little monk said. Then he watched Wen Shiqi stagger away and couldn't help tilting his head curiously. Third Benefactor Wen had always been the calmest. What was wrong with him today? The chessboard inside seemed to be overturned. Did he think of something terrible? Marquis Xing's mansion was in conflict with and Great Elder Princess again, and it was still because of 5th Miss Xiao. At present, the matter of Princess Chen not only made the whole capital city aware of it, but also made new and old things linked together and turned from a small matter to a big one. An imperial censor had begun to censure Marquis Xing, Xiao Jing, saying that he was not kind to his niece. Not only him, but also old Madame of Marquis Xing's mansion, who obviously occupied the position of an elder, did not have any kindness to her juniors. Not only did she not raise 5th Miss Xiao, but she also looked for 5th Miss Xiao for no reason and suppressed Princess Chen with filial piety. It was really too much. It was said that the evidence was provided by an old maid of Marquis Xing's mansion. It was said that old Madam of Marquis Xing's mansion deliberately tortured 5th Miss Xiao. Before she got married, she forced her to go to the Yuhui nunnery to observe mourning for her parents. Later, the servants in the mansion secretly killed her. Now that the old madam had something to ask of her, she blamed her for the matter of Commandery Prince Qing, which made Ru and great elder princess angry. Chapter 937. Hearing the censor's words, the censors who had been friends with Xiao Jing in the past stood out to speak. They criticized Ru and great elder princess and said that Ru and great elder princess had too much power. Although she was the royal great elder princess and had a noble status, she had to take into account the thoughts of her officials, especially the nobles. The nobles who had made contributions to the imperial court respected the royal great elder princess, but she should not be ordered to do so. How could she ignore the imperial court's decency? Then there were 2 factions in the imperial court. One faction thought that Ru and great elder princess was wrong, while the other faction thought that Marquis Xing's mansion had gone too far. They had no affection for Marquis Xing's mansion and had never raised Princess Qin. How could they instruct Princess Qin to do something when something happened? Moreover, it was related to the marriage of the royal family. As for the marriage of the younger sister, Xiao Jing certainly would not agree with it. He only said that Commandery Prince Qing had misunderstood old madam's meaning. As for other things, Xiao Jing kept complaining that he was wronged. Everyone argued that they were right. Although there weren't many people on Xiao Jing's side, they were still arguing with each other until their faces turned red. From the looks of it, they were really civil officials. Otherwise, they would have started fighting. What do you think, Prince Qin? A booklet in the emperor's hand suddenly flew down and smashed into the body of a minister who was arguing vigorously. Immediately, the minister was so frightened that he knelt down with a putong sound. The other people didn't dare to continue speaking. The great hall quieted down, and only the emperor's low voice could be heard. Chu Liuchen's beautiful eyes fell on the imperial officials who were arguing fiercely just now. My princess has been lonely since she was a child, and no one really dotes on her. But now she has me. Since she belongs to me, no one can bully her at will. Standing in front of the rank platform, Xiao Jing suddenly felt that something was wrong. He had only thought of the way to deal with Ru and great elder princess, but had not thought of Prince Qin. Since you have never raised my princess, why do you make my princess do something immoral with filial piety? Marquis Xing, I want to ask you, if your mansion keeps doing this kind of immoral things, are you going to push the blame to my princess? Chu Liuchen's face turned cold, and his eyes fell on Xiao Jing's face. The smile on his lips was a bit more treacherous and cold. Xiao Jing panicked and hurriedly came out from the steps, trying to defend himself. Marquis Xing, I will say this once here. If you have anything bad in the future, don't always think of my princess. Since she was a child, no one really dotes on her. Now that she is married, just pretend that she has never been your child. If you feel that you have suffered a loss, I can return part of the dowry and only keep my mother-in-law's dowry when she married to Marquis Xing's mansion. Chu Liuchen said coldly. The smile on his handsome face was cold without any warmth, which was very different from the impression he gave people in the past. Anyone could see that Prince Qin was angry. Originally, anyone who said such words would be labeled as unfilial, but Chu Liuchen's words made many people not know how to deal with it for a while. On the one hand, of course, it was because of Chu Liuchen's identity. On the other hand, it was also because of the meaning in Chu Liuchen's words. If the elder was not kind and did not have the grace to raise him, why should the younger generation care about it? Moreover, the younger generation's identity was not ordinary. As for returning the dowry, it was more like returning the money and breaking the bond. Marquis Xing, what does your mansion mean? How can you let go of the princess? Marquis Xing, what does your mansion mean? How can you let go of the princess? She is still young and doesn't know much. If she has done something wrong, please tell me. If you really want her to do something, you can tell me directly, lest she comes to me to beg me again. Chu Liuchen said, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. It was a perfect smile, but it was very cold, which made people feel inexplicably scared. I didn't. Xiao Jing stammered and couldn't even speak clearly. He had never thought that Prince Chen would humiliate him in front of all the civil and military officials, and he was slapped in the face mercilessly. How could he answer and say such words? Since you didn't, Marquis Xing, don't look for my princess in the future. Chu Luchen said, if you have anything, just come to me. Don't let others say that she is unfilial. She was not raised in your mansion, and you are not close to her. She has suffered enough for so many years. Chu Luchen didn't intend to let Xiao Jing go so easily. Yes, I know. Xiao Jing had to answer. Marquis Xing, take care of your family affairs in the future. The emperor said. Yes, I know. Xiao Jing had to admit this crime, and he couldn't help feeling a little bitter. He didn't expect that Prince Chen, who had never cared about family affairs, would be so partial to his niece. But even if he knew that the emperor was partial to Xiao Wanru, Xiao Jing couldn't say anything. In fact, not only Prince Chen was partial to Xiao Wanru, but the emperor was also partial to Prince Chen. What could he say? Since Xiao Jing had admitted his crime, the censors of the two sides didn't argue anymore. They looked at Chu Luchen, stopped talking, and returned to their positions. Although the censors had the right to speak, the person in front of them was Prince Chen, and they had never heard that the emperor had reprimanded Prince Chen. No matter whether the emperor's partiality was real or not, at least on the surface, no one would say that Prince Chen was ungrateful. The censors were not stupid. Before they figured out the emperor's intention, no one would really offend him. Moreover, it was for this kind of backyard fight. Even if they really won the fight, they wouldn't get much benefit, and even wouldn't have a good reputation. Chu Luchen seemed to be listening to them, but he didn't listen to them. He sat there lazily and looked a little lazy. It was none of his business, and there was nothing wrong with his behavior. However, after seeing the fierceness of Prince Chen, everyone was a little afraid of him when they looked at the sick and weak Prince Chen. Didn't they see that the emperor didn't even mention Prince Chen's outrageous words, and even let Marquis Xing admit his crime? After the court meeting, Chu Luchen still waited for others to leave, and then slowly came out of the main hall and walked slowly to the palace. He didn't come to the court from outside the palace like others. It was much closer to the main hall from the side door. In addition, he was in poor health, so the emperor and the empress dowager wanted him to go through the side door, and they repeatedly said that the side door was left to make it more convenient for them to go. Third brother. When he just turned a corner, he unexpectedly saw Chu Luiwe. It seemed that he specially came to stop him. What's the matter? Chu Luchen said lightly with a thin smile, and not much joy could be seen. Nothing. I just want to ask you what happened and whether you need help or not. Chu Luiwe said gently and sincerely. I dare not trouble you, brother. It's nothing. Chu Luchen said casually. It's good that you are fine. If you have any problem, you can come to me. No matter what, we are brothers, and we grew up together, so we are different from others. Chu Luiwe nodded, and then cupped his hands to him, turned around, and turned into another path. Looking at the path that Chu Luiwe walked into, Chu Liuchen's eyes deepened a little, and then he walked in the direction of Prince Chen's mansion. After he left, Chu Luiwe appeared at the intersection that he had turned into before, and looked at the direction of Prince Chen's mansion with a little jealousy in his eyes. Obviously, he was the son of the emperor, but why couldn't he compare with Chu Luchen? As a prince of the previous dynasty, he really regarded himself as the prince of the emperor and lived in the Nangong Palace. Although the Nangong Palace was not the East Palace, it was above all the princes. Although the Nangong Palace had now been changed to Prince Chen's mansion, how could other princes' mansions compare with it? Now there was no East Palace, and Prince Chen's mansion was unique. They could come and go in the Imperial Palace at will. For this reason, many courtiers thought highly of Chu Luchen, who lived in Prince Chen's mansion. In addition, with Chu Liuchen's own identity, how could the emperor tolerate Chu Luchen and care more about him than himself, his own son? Prince. Seeing his master still in a daze, Xiao Qizi reminded him. Let's go. Chu Luiwe turned around and returned to the previous road. Prince, are we going there at this time? Xiao Qizi looked around uneasily and said in a low voice. It's just a casual walk. Don't panic. Chu Luiwei was dissatisfied. Yes, I know. Xiao Qizi nodded repeatedly and said, Prince, don't worry. I have arranged it. Even if someone sees it, they will just think it is an accident and won't let anyone find out. That's the best. Chu Luiwei raised his eyebrows coldly. Since that woman seemed to be useful, of course, he would not let her go. If a woman could still have some means in this situation, it could be regarded as her ability. Of course, he had to give her a chance. Moreover, she was such a beauty. In the past, he had a good idea about her. When Chu Luchen came back, Xiao Wanru was catching butterflies in the garden with a few maids. Although the garden of Prince Chen's mansion was not as big as that of the Imperial Palace, it was still much more majestic than that of other mansions. There were many exotic flowers and plants in it. Xiao Wanru also saw several of them, which could be regarded as fine flowers in the Imperial Palace. Looking at the soil under their roots, they had been cultivated not long ago. Xiao Wanru was very happy with the maids, and she was also sweating all over. While they were busy, she suddenly saw Chu Luchen appear. The maids hurriedly stood still and did not dare to make a sound. Xiao Wanru turned her head. Her complexion had been the best, and now she was even more charming like a flower. Her pink face was faintly blushing. The pink became more pink, and the white became whiter. Her beautiful eyes were like two pools of clear water, with attractive ripples. What was particularly attractive was her cherry lips, which were like flowers, delicate and beautiful. Her coldness in the past had become more charming. Such a color, coupled with her exquisite facial features, made her more beautiful. Seeing Chu Luchen, Xiao Wanru, who was a little out of breath, said with her watery eyes lit up, Your Highness. As soon as she finished speaking and walked towards Chu Luchen, she suddenly leaned back, blacked out, and fell straight back. Chapter 9:38. Chu Liuchen's face changed dramatically. He hurried forward to hold Qi-ju and told Xiao Xuanzi, Ask Qi-ju to come here quickly. I'll go right away. Xiao Xuanzi ran out in a hurry. Chu Luchen strode back to the courtyard with Xiao Wanru in his arms. The faces of the servant girls and old maids he saw along the way changed. They had never seen Prince Qin in such a panic. Was something serious going to happen? Although Chu Luchen gave people the feeling that he was very sick and weak, like an exiled immortal in a painting, in any case, an exiled immortal was very leisurely. Even if he walked, he would not be fast. However, Chu Luchen, who was like an exiled immortal, sped up his pace with big strides. In addition, a large group of people following him could only keep up with him by running, which showed that something had happened. The servant girls and old maids were all silent. No one dared to say anything. They lowered their heads and looked at each other. Qi-ju came very quickly. After feeling Xiao Wanru's pulse, he frowned tightly. How is it? Chu Luchen said impatiently. Princess Yu is fine, but... Qi-ju thought for a while and said, Nothing serious. She just got sick. How is it? Chu Liuchen's eyes were cold. In fact, it's not a big deal. It seems that Princess Yu is tired. Qi-ju was also a little confused and said hesitantly, Have you seen anyone who is tired and suddenly fainted? Zhuozhuo has always been in good health. Chu Luchen became more and more impatient, and his eyes were full of darkness. In terms of pulse, she is really tired. But after a careful examination, there is something different. It seems that she has encountered something conflicting. Qi-ju said slowly in a low voice. In fact, it was very shallow and not very powerful. Basically, it couldn't be found out. If Xiao Wanru hadn't fainted suddenly today, even Qi-ju couldn't feel her pulse. Someone wants to hurt Princess Yu? What is it? Chu Luchen asked. I don't know whether Princess Yu accidentally encountered it or someone deliberately targeted Princess Yu, but the amount is not large. Your Highness, don't worry. She will be fine after taking a few doses of medicine. It doesn't matter. Although Qi-ju was puzzled, he thought about the effect of the medicine and felt relieved. In fact, it was really not a big deal, and it was not necessarily that someone wanted to harm Wang Fei. What will happen if I measure it? Chu Luchen asked with a cold face and squinted his eyes weirdly. If the dosage is large, it's not a big deal. She'll just be a little weaker, but it's nothing. Princess's body has always been better than others. This dosage is not a big deal for ordinary people, and it's even less a big deal for Princess. Chi-Ju felt that he was making a mountain out of a molehill. This matter was really not a big deal. It was just because of a few patches of medicine. Since it's not a big deal, why did she suddenly faint? Chu Luchan said thoughtfully. He glanced coldly at Chi-Ju and changed the topic. Knowing that Chu Luchan was not a man to be trifled with, Chi-Ju explained helplessly, "Your Highness, Princess suddenly fainted. In fact, it's not entirely because of some conflicting things. It's also because Princess suddenly exercised too much, which made her heart beat too fast. In addition, the dizziness caused by this medicine is very light. When she saw Your Highness coming, she suddenly fainted." Chi-Ju asked Xiao Xuanzi about the specific situation at that time. As soon as he heard it, he knew that Princess suddenly exercised too much and was affected. Then she suddenly fainted because she was excited and happy to see His Highness. Princess fainted because she was too excited to see me? A smile suddenly appeared at the corner of Chu Liuchen's mouth. Such a gentle and elegant smile made people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. In the past, people would feel that it was elegant and tranquil. But now, Chi-Ju felt a chill. Anyone who saw a gloomy and hostile face just now would feel their heart palpitate as if a spring breeze had suddenly passed by. Chi-Ju felt that even if he had good medical skills, he really couldn't bear the speed and level of changing his face. There were actually people who thought that Prince Chen was as gentle as jade. Chi-Ju felt that those who thought so were brainless. If Chu Luchan was as gentle as jade, there would be no one in this world who was ferocious. It should be the reason, Chi-Ju said with a serious face. Chu Luchan was cold-blooded and ruthless, and he would turn his back on people. Don't think that he was bathing in the spring breeze at this moment. He might become gloomy the next moment. Chi-Ju felt that the expression on his face now was the most appropriate. Then who wants to hurt her? She may have been drugged somewhere. Although the consequences of fainting are not serious, it will kill people at specific times. Chi-Ju, I don't want there to be such a hidden danger around Princess. Chu Liuchen's face became cold, and a strong bloodthirsty aura surged from him. Imperceptibly, even the air became cold. Xiao Xuanzi lowered his head and didn't dare to move. I'm afraid it's not easy to find out. Chi-Ju immediately said seriously. If it's not easy to find out, you should also find out for me. Find out who Princess met in the mansion today. What's different from the past? Your Highness, the difference between Princess and the past is that she met the people sent from the palace. Yu Jia suddenly thought of something and said anxiously. The people sent from the palace? Chu Luchan said coldly. Yes, he was sent by the palace. He was sent here before. Yu Jia blushed and couldn't go on. She could only wink at Xiao Xuanzi to show that it was really difficult for her to say it. Xiao Xuanzi raised his head slightly and saw Yu Jia's action of asking for help. He was stunned at first, and then he understood. He immediately approached Chu Luchan and whispered, Master, you forgot that before you got married, Empress Dowager and Empress sent palace maids. The palace maids who were in charge of human affairs were thrown in the most remote corner of the mansion. Haven't they been sent back? Chu Luchan looked at Xiao Xuanzi gloomily and said, I don't dare to make the decision for Empress Dowager and Empress. I want to ask you in a few days. And their identities are not the same. Xiao Xuanzi stuttered and explained. Not the same? What's the difference? However, since they are here, they can't leave. Chi-Ju, go to check them later and see if they brought anything bad with them. Chu Luchan said coldly. Yes, Master, I'll go right away. Chi-Ju felt too tired to stay here. It was not easy to serve Prince Qin, who was cold and hot at times. It was better for him to be a doctor and check medicine. After that, he turned around and ran away with the medicine box on his back. Xiao Xuanzi chased after him and asked someone to lead the way for Chi-Ju. Dr. Qi didn't know where he was at all. He turned around and ran away. Sure enough, Xiao Xuanzi felt that he couldn't understand the world of doctors. Master, the identity of the two palace maids is not ordinary. One is used by Empress Dowager in the palace and is the distant niece of Nanny Wei. The other one is said to be related to Empress. Xiao Xuanzi said bitterly. He reported with a straight face. He thought it was not a big deal. Even if it was related to Empress Dowager and Empress, he didn't need to worry. He was the only one. He could send them back after a while. Anyway, they couldn't suppress him at that time. What Xiao Xuanzi didn't expect was that the princess was involved in this matter. She was the person he cared about the most. Go and get 10 lashes later. Chu Luchen said coldly. Yes, I know. Xiao Xuanzi's face became more and more bitter. If he had known it, he should have reported it to Prince earlier, in case Princess almost had an accident. A voice suddenly came from the bed. Chu Liuchen's cold face suddenly became gentle. He walked to the bed and sat down. Yu Jie and Chu Lu went forward to lift the gauze curtain and hang it on the hook. Your Highness, what's wrong with me? Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes, which were like butterfly wings, fluttered twice. She slowly opened her eyes and saw Chu Liuchen's gentle smile. She couldn't help but reach out to touch it, and then supported herself with her hands to sit up. Her movement was very natural. Chu Luchen hurriedly reached out and half-picked her up. He took a heavy cushion for her, put it behind her, and gently put her down. He was so meticulous, as if he was holding the most precious thing in the world in his arms. After putting her down, Chu Luchen asked softly, Do you feel uncomfortable? Is there anything wrong with me? Xiao Wanru reached out to take Chu Liuchen's hand. The scene of her fainting just now was right in front of her. Thinking about it carefully, she was really confused. She had always been in good health. Why did she suddenly faint? Xiao Wanru had good medical skills and was very sensitive to this kind of thing. She immediately noticed something. Did you feel anything unusual when you met the two palace maids? Chu Luchen knew that he couldn't hide it from her, so he narrowed his beautiful eyes slightly and asked. Nothing unusual. They were anxious to see me today and said that they wanted to go back to the Imperial Palace. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and said, The matter of the two palace maids had been reported to her before. At that time, she had other plans, so she didn't pay much attention to it. Today, the two palace maids wanted to see her again. She wanted to see what they were up to, so she purposely met them. She slowly put her hand on her pulse. After feeling it carefully, a trace of anger flashed in her eyes. She knew her body best. Obviously, there was something wrong with her. The only difference between today and the past was that she met the two palace maids and went to pounce on the butterflies. Such actions were actually not big. When Xiao Wanru was in Jiangzhou, she was in good health. At that time, Madame D seldom cared about her, and Qin Huaiyong would not let anyone keep an eye on her. Old Madame Qin was old, so sometimes she would run out of the mansion without being noticed. At that time, she was an out-and-out wild girl, and it was not difficult for her to climb over the wall. Therefore, she was in good health. It was impossible for her to faint after a few movements like those weak girls in the boudoir. Your Highness, there is something wrong with the two palace maids. Xiao Wanru put her hand on her pulse and said with certainty. Chu Luchen gently held her in his arms, patted her back lovingly, and comforted her softly. I know. I'll understand it later. In a place where Xiao Wanru couldn't see, Chu Liuchen's eyes were full of malice and bloodthirst. He raised the corner of his mouth gloomily. No matter who it was, since they had been sent here, they naturally had to see blood. Chapter 939. The two palace maids were both very beautiful. One was slightly thinner, but she was adorably thin. Her complexion was outstanding. She was the kind that made people want to take pity on her. The other was slightly more voluptuous, but she also had a slender waist and plump buttocks. Both of them were beauties. Even in the palace, they were rare beauties. These two beauties, each with their own characteristics, were actually very attractive. After kneeling down, the two beauties were timid. They almost hugged each other and did not dare to look up at the handsome prince sitting on top. In fact, just now, when facing Xiao Xuanzi, The two palace maids were still very arrogant and said that they came from the palace and were sent by the Empress Dowager and the Empress to serve Prince Chen. They could not be controlled by Xiao Xuanzi, a steward eunuch of Prince Chen's mansion. But the next moment, the two palace maids who followed them here were directly dragged away and beaten to death, and the two of them were also forced to watch the execution. Looking at the two clever nannies being beaten to death in front of them, their unwilling eyes seemed to be fixed on them. There was a stiff aura after death. The aura of defeat made the two palace maids, who were holding their heads high just now, shrink into a ball. Everyone in the palace knew that Prince Chen was handsome. He was like a handsome young man coming out of an ink painting and was incomparably noble. Even if there were some bad rumors about such a man, they would be ignored. At least from a distance, Prince Chen looked a little sick and weak, and his face was as gentle as jade. Although Prince Chen was actually not as gentle as the legend said, he was cold-blooded and ruthless. But the palace maids who had not seen him like this all thought that it was a rumor, and rumors could not be trusted. But now, the two palace maids did not dare to have any extravagant thoughts, and they almost hugged each other. "Master, there is some incense on their clothes. It is not very strong and there is some smell of medicine, but it is just some ordinary medicine to smoke insects." Xiao Xuanzi came forward and reported. This was the conclusion that Qi Ju had just drawn. There were many such incense in the palace. "Can't you find out?" Chu Luchen asked lazily. "Since you can't find out, just beat them to death. I don't necessarily need evidence to do things." Two guards walked in from the door. Their sharp eyes were still filled with hostility after the execution. "Your Highness, please spare us, please spare us. We servants really don't know anything. We servants really don't know anything. Your Highness, please spare my life, spare my life." The two palace maids cried loudly and struggled to break free from the hands of the guards. Unfortunately, their strength was useless in the hands of the guards. "Since you are useless, why should our prince keep you alive? Look for our princess properly. If you want to harm our princess, you don't need to keep your lives," Xiao Xuanzi said harshly. His smiling face, which used to look kind in the past, now had a fierce look. Your Highness, this servant has something important to report. This servant knows about it." A palace maid suddenly pulled on the door frame and screamed in a sharp voice, "Wang Yi, this servant knows who wants to harm Wang Fei. Pull him back," Chu Luchen said coldly. The two guards turned around, pulled the palace maid back again, and threw her heavily on the ground. The two delicate palace maids were no longer as charming and gentle as before. They fell to the ground in embarrassment, with delicate makeup all over their faces, like crazy women. One of the palace maids collapsed on the ground, and the other took 2 steps forward. She kowtowed heavily 3 times. "Your Highness, this servant didn't want to look for Wang Fei today, but someone instigated this servant to go." "Say it," Chu Luchen said. Your Highness, she asked me to go. I have been in the mansion for so many days, and I have been very obedient. But this time, she suddenly asked me to look for Wang Fei. If something happened to Wang Fei, it must have something to do with her." The other palace maid who collapsed on the ground suddenly struggled to sit up on her knees, pointed at the previous palace maid, and cried loudly. You are slandering me." After being stunned for a moment, the previous palace maid also pointed at her and said, "It was she who wanted to see Wang Fei. She must have done something. Your Highness, it must be she who wants to harm Wang Fei." The two palace maids were not stupid. From the previous words, they knew that there was something wrong with this matter. It was impossible for Prince Chen to look for them for no reason. Something must have happened to Wang Fei. At this time, no one dared to take the responsibility, so they blamed each other. "Your Highness, she is the Empress's servant, and I am the Empress Dowager's servant. The Empress Dowager dotes on you the most, so how could she find a bad one for you? Your Highness, she's speaking nonsense. Although this servant is a person by the Empress side, the Empress respects Your Highness the most. If something happens to Your Highness, the Empress cannot escape the blame. How could the Empress do something that displeases the Emperor? It's her. She has evil intentions and conspired against Wang Fei." The two palace maids blamed each other one after another. Slap. Chu Liuchen's cold face darkened and he said lightly. Slap each of them 10 times. Xiao Xuanzi said loudly. The guards on both sides came over and slapped the two palace maids fiercely 10 times. The two palace maids' faces immediately swelled up, and blood flowed from the corners of their mouths. Send them to the palace. Chu Luchen looked at the two miserable palace maids below and suddenly said, Yes, Your Highness. Xiao Xuanzi nodded. The two palace maids also heard it, and they were relieved. At least they survived, at least they were not dead. Since they don't want to say it, don't say it in the future. Chu Luchen stood up, glanced at the two palace maids kneeling below, and turned to go out. Go back the way you came. I can't let them lose something in my mansion. I understand. Xiao Xuanzi understood tacitly. He looked up at the two palace maids with a bit of coldness. Come on, pull out their tongues, and then send them to the mansion together with the parts. Don't let people in the palace think that we have taken advantage of them. The guards answered and pulled the two palace maids away. After being stunned for a while, the two palace maids struggled desperately to call for help. However, no matter how they shouted this time, they were finally pulled down. Two sharp screams came from Prince Qin to the Imperial Palace. The execution was carried out at the side door connecting the Imperial Palace and Prince Chen's mansion, which was the closest to the palace. The screams of the two palace maids spread far away in the palace. The palace maids in that area who heard it were all trembling with fear, and their faces were pale. It was one thing to hear it, but it was another thing to hear it. Then the palace maids who saw the two palace maids being sent to the Fengyi Palace had nightmares at night. The two palace maids were not dead, but their current situation was worse than death. Prince Chen was as handsome as an immortal and as gentle as jade. Fake, they were all fake. Prince Chen was a devil who couldn't be provoked. Just look at the current state of the two palace maids. After the execution of the two palace maids, they were sent to the Empress openly and placed under the Dan Palace of the Empress's Fengyi Palace. Your Highness, our master asked you to find out who wanted to hurt our master and our princess. Our master and princess are not sensible. When something like this happened, the first person they thought of was Your Highness. Moreover, the cause of this matter is also in the palace, so it's most appropriate to hand it over to Your Highness. Xiao Xuanzi was still smiling with a hint of flattery. The Empress's face was pale, and she held the handle of the chair. If it weren't for her strong momentum, she would have almost fainted at this moment. The two palace maids didn't lift up the tongues, but they were sent to her with bloody tongues. Our master said he was useless and couldn't find out who it was. The two palace maids still quibbled. Our master couldn't do anything about it, and he didn't want to listen to them fooling our master. So we have to trouble Your Highness. Our master is a little unwell now, and we also want to invite several imperial physicians to come and have a look. Not only our master, but also our princess. Xiao Xuanzi didn't seem to notice that the Empress's face was as pale as snow. He clenched his teeth tightly and couldn't say a word. The nanny who followed the Empress hurriedly stepped forward to smooth things over when she saw that the situation was not good. Eunuch Xiao Xuanzi, please go back first. The Empress knows. She is also a little unwell, and she will send imperial physicians over later. Please rest assured, Prince Qin. The Empress will definitely not let go of these people who want to hurt Princess Qin. Then I'll trouble Your Highness. I'm leaving. Xiao Xuanzi said with a smile, looking extremely kind. The Empress tried hard to control her hand and waved, motioning him to go back. Xiao Xuanzi left with a smile. After Xiao Xuanzi left, the Empress covered her chest and suddenly stood up from the chair. After taking a few steps, she couldn't stand it anymore and vomited violently. A group of maids and eunuchs panicked and hurriedly rushed to the Empress. The Empress finally calmed down and was helped to sit down in the side hall. After freshening up and sitting down, the Empress's face was still as pale as snow. She recovered a little strength and patted the table hard with her hand. She gritted her molars and almost squeezed out a voice from her teeth. Chu Luchen, you've gone too far. Your Highness, please stop talking. The people beside her hurriedly persuaded. I can't bear it. The Empress said with hatred. As long as she thought of the scene just now, she wanted to tear Chu Luchan into pieces. Just now, she was slapped in the face, and she was so scared that she couldn't say a word. Your Highness, you have to bear it even if you can't bear it. Prince Chen is not someone else. His Majesty will definitely ask about it. The nanny who followed the Empress cautiously reminded her. The Empress fell silent with a sullen face. Since this matter had become like this, it would never be solved easily. Investigate, you must find out for me who wants to frame Prince Chen's mansion, me and the Empress Dowager. Since this kind of thing couldn't be covered up, it had to be made a big deal. One of them was related to her, which made the Empress very angry. If she had known this earlier, she would have chosen two at random and sent them to Chu Luchan. She actually thought that Chu Luchan would keep one of the Empress Dowager's people, so Chu Luchan couldn't embarrass her and send her one back. Who knew things would turn out like this? His Majesty is here. A eunuch's sharp voice came from outside the side hall. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.